I think we're ready to start. Yeah, no, I think we're ready to start. Let's see if I have everything right. Ow. Okay, that's... Nope, that's... Ow. Ow. I forgot I had a button for that. I didn't mean that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream. My name, of course, is Alma Hexblade, your head guildmaster and chief barista. And guess what, everybody? It's Friday. We get to learn things on Friday. Isn't that great? I hope you guys think it's awesome as I do. I'm using this as a punchline now. No one can stop me from pressing the button myself. I forgot I had those. Hold on. Wait. Ow! I'm gonna keep going until I see a blahage. Hold on. I know I have them. 2 just came up. Are you... There it is. Hello. Goodbye. Okay. We can start now. I know I'm not beating myself up. That's like something I'm not supposed to do. Alright. Oh, nope, that's a video that's for later. So first, we have a couple videos on speedrunning because I thought they were fun. With my glasses off, I look kind of insane. What were the topics to say? Speedrunning, technology, PB&J sandwiches, spies, F1 racing, and more. Yeah, that sounds just about right. Alright, let's start with this one. Like, these two are from Lowest Percent. I think I showed you guys beforehand. It's about Mario speedrunning. And I thought they were cool, and they just popped up, so I wanted to put these there first, before we go into the rest of the stuff, you know? Yeah, I've heard of Sunday school. Welcome to Friday Funiversity. Exactly. We're learning adjacent. I mean, Abigail has Sunday school. That's her. But we're here for Friday. I'm going to start that again because it was muted this entire time.
Super Mario Odyssey is one of the most popular speedrunning games of all time. Over the last 3 years, runners have managed to beat it in as little as 57 minutes. After beating the game,
oh, that got shorter than I thought.
The ability to access the Mushroom Kingdom for the first time. It's an amazing homage to Super Mario 64. But what if I told you there's a much faster way to get to Mushroom Kingdom? There's a Super Mario Odyssey speedrun called Star Percent, where the goal of the run is to reach Mushroom Kingdom as fast as possible and grab a single star. This can be done however you want, including just beating the game normally and getting a star.
Hi, Allie.
But if you want to get the world record, things get a bit more complicated.
Oh,
Star Percent became a
what was
category
that?
right after Odyssey released back in 2017. It's progressed from a simple meme category to one of the most challenging and game-breaking glitch showcases in all of Super Mario Odyssey. Here's how it went back then. You'd beat Cap Kingdom normally, then Cascade using a small skip with the T-Rex, and beat Sand. Then you were left with a choice. Go to Lake Kingdom or go to Wooded Kingdom.
I love
Now,
Dino
this
Skip.
decision
Dino Skip's such a good skip.
Consequential, but it actually influences the run quite a lot. The reason for this is because of how warp paintings work in the game. In a casual playthrough, paintings are generally used to preview future kingdoms. In this run, though, that isn't the case. The decision to go to Lake or Wooded also influences where the paintings send you. The first kingdom you select will have a painting that leads to Sand, and the second kingdom's painting will lead to Luncheon. Our goal is to get to Luncheon, so the fastest option was to select Lake Kingdom, beat it as quickly as possible.
This game is 6 years old. Really? I hate this.
Boss, and unlock the Luncheon painting. Then do a tight jump to reach it.
Oh, that is pretty good.
With Mario through the painting, you get a nice island in the sky to preview the kingdom from. Nintendo placed this island far enough away from the mainland that there's no way you would ever be able to reach it. Or so they thought.
Unless
speedrunners managed to find a way. There's an extremely precise jump called Brunchin that you can do here to just barely reach the rest of the kingdom.
Oh.
Like ground pounding, rolling, landing, canceling the roll, and turning at the perfect angle to maximize Mario's speed. Then precisely
They have to
bouncing
be due
from
to
the
new
edge
mainland Mario. I know,
Mario
right?
just reached the land. Now, of course, being in Luncheon Kingdom early is amazing. You just skipped 5 kingdoms. It's just a matter of going to the Odyssey.
Oh.
Oh, right. You haven't even unlocked the kingdom yet. The Odyssey isn't even here. So, what's the point of getting the Luncheon Kingdom if you can't even use the Odyssey?
Huh.
Well, it's another warp painting. Hidden away in a back corner of Luncheon Kingdom, there's a painting that leads to Mushroom Kingdom. Going through the painting drops you off at Yoshi's Island, which has a single star waiting for you. For a long time, this is how the run went. And the record got all the way down to 18 minutes and 6 seconds by Nicrovita. An insanely fast time, but the run wasn't really all that interesting besides the bruncheon jump.
I feel like I
That
could do
was
the run.
Until February of 2020,
Maybe.
where a single trick completely transformed the run. Cappy return cancels, or CRCs, were discovered. We covered it in another video, but here's how it works. By going into 2-player, you can separate Mario and Cappy. If you repeatedly ground pound with Cappy into the void, so he's really far away from Mario, you can do a frame perfect input to instantly translate that distance into another direction. Using this Cappy teleportation trick, it's possible to break the game even further.
What?
The trick was originally found and used for the minimum capture speedrun, but after a while, some of us realized how useful it could be for star percentage.
You?
If we use the CRC, we could skip having to finish Sand, Lake, and Wooded Kingdom. It seemed like the world record could be improved.
Yeah, I love
by a
these types
lot.
of speedrunning
So,
categories. They're so
I
interesting.
started doing runs. After a few days of attempts, I managed to get the world record, and it went like this. I beat Cap and Cascade just like before, and then arrived in Sand. But rather than beating all of Sand Kingdom, all I had to do was go straight to the inverted pyramid. By rolling and instantly canceling the roll into the door, I was able to clip through it.
Yeah.
Then I beat Harriet, which unlocked a different painting, this one to Metro Kingdom. I went in and, from here, I performed a CRC to capture the binoculars and teleport to the mainland. Then I went into another
I love
painting.
these. These are
This one
stupid.
to
These are
Lake
all
Kingdom.
great, though.
If you remember from before, the first kingdom you arrive in after completing Sand is supposed
Like-
to have a painting that leads back to Sand. But technically you haven't even completed Sand yet. So, instead, the painting destination is set to its default value, which, lucky for us, happens to be Luncheon Kingdom.
Okay.
So, from Lake Kingdom, I went into the painting straight to Luncheon Kingdom,
Did brunch?
where I did a new 2-player version of the bruncheon jump.
Whoa.
I made my way to the Mushroom
Oh.
Kingdom and finished the run. In
That's
14
anxiety.
minutes and 46 seconds.
Oh.
Less than 15 minutes to get all the way to Mushroom Kingdom. This time was insanely low. But little did I know, there were 2 other runners who wanted to get that time as low as possible. Red Sleigh and Mars.
Like, these are the best
two
types of
runners
runs because they
competed
can
with each
be,
other
like,
for months
you know,
and have
short.
optimized the category to the extreme. Here's what
So
they
you could do,
did.
like, a lot
They
of
added
runs
a
all
trick
together.
called DSS, or Dino Skip.
What?
This trick is extremely difficult and requires you to land on an obscenely small section of this wall to make it up to the Madame Brood boss fight more quickly, saving a few seconds. In Sand Kingdom,
Ooh.
rather than clipping into the pyramid and going through it, they do a trick called Inverted Pyramid Skip, where they do a nearly
Ads,
pixel
no.
perfect clip into this wall, to then do some
Ads,
precise
bad.
out-of-bounds movement and get on top of the
You're
pyramid,
swamped at
saving
work.
40 seconds. In Metro, they introduced a faster CRC, where instead of capturing the binoculars, they capture this pole to get to the painting a little bit faster.
Brandon, you're
After
swamped
all
at
those
work.
tricks, the challenge
Just tell them to restart stuff. It's all fine.
To Mushroom Kingdom.
Or
The
it's
world
not your
record is
fault.
currently held by Red Sleigh.
You know,
at 12 minutes
one
and
of the two.
48 seconds, with Mars being only 10 seconds behind.
it's always one of the two
Now,
options.
the current world record still isn't perfect. There are a few time saves that could still be implemented.
Dino
For the
Skip looks
CRC, rather
insane.
than swapping
I
into
love
one-player
this.
mode to aim Cappy, it's possible to aim Mario without switching.
Oh.
You only have about a
Ooh.
half a second to aim within a couple degrees of accuracy, but it would save 20 seconds if pulled off. In Luncheon Kingdom, the current world record does a damage boost across the lava on the way to the painting. Instead of taking damage, it's barely possible to land on some invisible blocks, shaving off a few more seconds.
Huh? Okay.
So, something I haven't mentioned yet, is that
Can
the
you talk
game
about
gets
how totally
pretty
legal Switch
confused
stuff
when you go through
after
paintings
stream?
that aren't supposed to be unlocked.
Sure.
And so, once arriving in Mushroom Kingdom,
Depends.
the
What
camera is
version of the
actually
Switch do you
locked in
have? Because there's
place.
certain ones that
The
don't
current
work.
record warps to fix this camera lock, but it's not actually necessary. It's possible to grab the star without that extra warp. You just have to do it basically blindfolded.
Oy,
So,
okay.
as with any run, there's always room for improvement. Even in a run like this, that has more game-breaking tricks than any other speedrun of Mario Odyssey. Both Red Sleigh and Mars are still trying to lower the record, and more runners have been trying their hand at this category as well. So, we'll have to wait and see just how low it can go. Anyways, that's it. If you want to see more speedrunning content like this, make sure to subscribe to Lowest Percent.
I like lowest percent. You know, but I mean, you can tell. In this hypothetical scenario, it'd be an OG Switch. I'll have to check if it's our Switch. Well, I can totally send you a guide on how to do it theoretically, and I'm not doing this at all. I'm theoretically doing it. I might be able to do it. You guys saw nothing, because literally nothing was on screen. Oh no! I did it as a bit. That was an actual accident. Whatever. It's okay. Anyway, you know what? Let's go over to another speedrunning one. Because I'm weirdly getting very excited about speedrunning. And I almost want to try and do it. Ooh. But this one is pretty good. What is the hardest trick in speedrunning? This is a 2-year-old video, so there's probably worse. But we'll see.
The years, the art of speedrunning video games has evolved immensely.
Oh, this is a bit quiet. Hold on.
As this hobby has gained traction over the past decade, more people have entered the speedrun scene, contributing to make the runs themselves faster via increasing the quality of play, as well as discoveries of tricks, skips, and glitches galore. However, these new developments often result in the runs themselves becoming much harder to improve, with new world record speedrunnings beginning to implement some of the most difficult, absurd, and even seemingly impossible tricks. These tricks and glitches range from incredibly precise positioning to successfully execute the trick,
What the hell
to
is that?
astonishing sequence of frame-perfect inputs, pushing the limits of what is humanly possible, all while trying to go fast. In this video, I will be going over a handful of the most recent examples.
What's that guy
of the
doing on the
difficult
right?
Tricks
Hold up.
used in speedrunning today, and who knows, maybe by the end of it, you'll feel a little bit inspired. Or maybe you'll be too afraid to even pick up a controller to try any of these tricks.
I think it's also
Well,
fun that we have,
let's begin.
it is in fact,
Starting off with
what,
the original
Summer Games
Super
Done
Mario
Quick
Bros,
weekend?
where, thanks to this game's frame
Week.
rule system, time and levels can only be
Oh, this
saved
one,
or
that one
lost
is really,
within
yeah.
levels of 21 frames in a 60 FPS game. And over the course of several decades, Super Mario Bros. Speedrunners have been able to match tool-assisted speedrun frame rules in several levels, even within full game runs, especially
Difficult
the early
tricks,
levels.
yeah. I
But
wanna see
one
how hard
level
this
in
can get,
particular
you know?
became a bottleneck, where many world record attempts died. Beating World 4-2 as fast as possible is one of the hardest and strictest segments in speedrunning history. In order to compete for the world record, which is usually a frame rule slower than the TAS here, players must be able to clip into a brick wall in order to displace Mario's horizontal position about 20
Oh yeah, there it
to the
is.
right.
It's
Hit the
that
beanstalk
display
block and
displacement.
enter this pipe at the correct time in order to wrong warp to the warp zone to get to World 8, skipping the long beanstalk climbing animation in the process. All gas, no brakes. In Super Mario Bros. Any percent, this is where the majority of runs will likely die, not even 2 minutes into a speedrun barely under 5 minutes.
Yeah, that
But
one
wait,
instead.
it can get even
The
harder.
full half in Super
You
Metroid. We'll
could
find
try
out.
to match the task frame rule by going for Lightning 4-2. This is an even more ludicrous than the already difficult Fast 4-2,
Oh,
utilizing a single quick bump to displace Mario 12 pixels to the right, multiple frame-perfect inputs on the D-pad, including a pipe
Do it?
jump to successfully perform the wrong warp.
The pipe jump is
Former world
terrifying
record holder
looking.
Nifsky grinded for this frame rule on and off for about half a year, before becoming the first human to nail Lightning 4-2 on January 30th, 2021. An absolutely incredible feat today, and perhaps the standard for world records
I
tomorrow.
love whatever chat's doing down
Similar
there.
to Super Mario Bros.
Alright, here we go.
GoldenEye N64,
Ooh.
specifically on the level Depot on the Agent difficulty, has an instance where speedrunners attempt a trick
Ow.
previously believed to be task only. In this level on the Agent difficulty, the only objective is to navigate to and board Trevelyan's train. In a normal playthrough, you can reach this train by entering this building and traveling through the second floor to open this roller gate before boarding the train.
Okay.
For about a couple decades, speedrunners took this basic route in order to finish the level as quickly as possible.
Hold on.
Is
Frame
a
rules
roller
explained
gate
for
on the side
normies.
of the
Mario's an old
warehouse
game.
that
Tired
would
old
be a
man with
more
energy
direct
is able
path
to
to
check
the
if you're
train,
past the goal every now
but
and then.
alas, it cannot be.
Yeah. I guess
However,
that's what it can do.
2006,
What it counts
the
as.
former world champion, Wouter Jansen, discovered that while using the turbo mode cheat, that it was possible to clip through this locked gate via a warp. Warps are a common technique
what is this
used in
movement?
GoldenEye speedrunning in order
Ooh.
to clip through slowly moving doors or up ladders by generating enough lag by switching weapons or shooting.
Bang.
Warps generally weren't that difficult to perform,
Shorter sharp to do
but
it
this
sh-
warp proved to be quite tricky. And without the turbo cheat, it was very
I
inconsistent.
think I remember
and appeared
seeing
to
that
be
at
task
like
only.
someone when
Several
someone
years
streamed
after
Super Metroid.
Wouter posted about this discovery, runners would sometimes attempt it during bad runs of the level just for the hell of it, but none of them could get it to work. That is, until April 26, 2015, when the speedrunner Scorpion went for it. And this happened.
Also, shoutouts to sriracha, my favorite condiment. Oh.
Scorpion had done it.
Wait, we're on
He
Metroid now.
became
What's
the
this one?
first human to pull off the warp without cheats.
Not yet. Hold
That same
on.
day, the world record was lowered from 25 seconds to 24,
Hey.
and then to 23 the next day,
Ooh.
which is still the record to this day, tied by 18 people. Despite this, the Depot Gate Warp is an incredibly precise trick that requires a good angle and good timing immediately after performing a somewhat accurate gunshot to lure guards out of the train in order to get 23 seconds. Runners have only been able to successfully pull off this warp once they put in enough time in the level, and even then, they can go several hours without even getting it once, not unlike another infamous shortcut within another N64 classic. In Mario Kart 64,
Oh,
several
God.
games tracks have shortcuts which use glitches in order to
Oh,
complete the laps
I know
much
this.
faster
I know
than
this. I know this
intended.
glitch. No.
The most infamous example is a skip known as the Weather Tanko on Choco Mountain. Discovered by the Tasser Weatherton in 2014, the glitch
Wait, no, I thought
shortcut
this was
involves
Wario.
jumping up a wall
Oh
and
my
past the
God.
finish line using the boost of a mushroom and a precise hop to clip through a precise part of the wall briefly before tumbling back down. This tiny clip will trick the game into thinking the player has hit a checkpoint later along the track, and the lap will count once they cross the finish line. Getting the correct boost on console proved to be quite difficult, and many debated whether it could even be done by a human. However, on August 1st, 2014, the top runner, Beck Abney, would become the first human to pull off
Of
the
course,
Weather
it's Choco
Tanko,
Mountain. Yeah.
finishing a lap in under 6 seconds.
Ooh.
After this, many people speculated whether it was possible to hit 3 Weather Tankos in a row in a single time trial. The odds of hitting the
I
Weather
do
Tanko
love the
were
human.
about
I
1
do
in
love
40.
like the human tasks,
Multiply
like
that 3
stuff you can
times,
do.
and the odds fall to about 1 in 64,000. This was due to not only the precision needed to clip into the wall, but you also had hope that the game didn't troll you with the incorrect frame when you hop up,
Ooh.
causing you to tumble down instead. Come 2017, and Abney would decide to grind for hitting 3 Weather Tankos in a row. It took over 26,000 failed attempts.
Oh my
On
God.
October 29th, Abney would successfully nail 3 Weather Tankos in a row, finishing the time trial in just over 16 seconds. To this day, only 4 people have successfully pulled off 3 out of 3 in a single time trial. But that is still more people who have
That's
pulled
not
that
difficult,
off
that's more
than
like-
the number of people
what?
who pulled off this next shortcut even once.
That's less difficulty and
Along
more.
with its older brother,
nonsense.
Mario Kart Wii is home to several glitchy skips known as ultra shortcuts. Some, like the Grumble Volcano and Coconut Mall Ultras, are relatively easy. Others are quite
I know the
difficult.
Grumble Volcano
and then
one.
there's Rainbow Road. On March 4th, 2016,
You need a much more
Passer Esteloy
than I have for
62
this.
discovered an ultra shortcut on Rainbow Road.
Maybe.
And it was quite the doozy.
Oh my
Hold on to
god.
the shortcut. You need to hop from a region known as a key checkpoint box to a region box not adjacent to the key checkpoint area. In this case, the player must jump from the finish line's key checkpoint box in order to prevent the key checkpoint from just before the finish line from unloading. On Rainbow Road, this involves clipping into the fence using a
Yeah, this is why I did my
up.
I did only one trick in my
Precise
Super
technique
Mario
known as
Sunshine
spin
run.
drift must be executed in
Or
order to
Sunshine playthrough. I just did like one trick because that seemed
and
really
off the
stupid
mushrooms.
easy. And it
If done
surprisingly
correctly,
was
the
very
player will land
stupid
just
easy.
before the key checkpoint, and the lap will count.
Is this the skip they pay tribute
This
to in
was
the Mario
quite
movie?
intimidating, to say the
Here's the
least,
thing.
and
I
despite
don't think it is because there's another Rainbow Road skip that looked closer to the one in the Mario movie. Hold on, let me find it. N64 Mario Kart Rainbow Road skip. There's a different skip, and I think it's this reference. So it's if you... There, that's what it was. So if you fall off at the precise angle, and I think it's like a jump involved, you skip half the track. I think it's this. Pretty sure it's this Rainbow Road shortcut. Like I just want to double check. Hold on. Let's look. Yeah, see, because it's a drift and a bounce, and you skip a huge portion of the track. Hold on. Let's see if this. Yeah. See, people already wrote it. Yeah, it's the stupid. It's the 64 shortcut. Because that one's Wii was a little bit more complicated. I wonder if there's like movie footage of this of it in the movie. I don't think so, and I'm very sad about that because it was a dope part of the movie.
a few people attempting the Ultra throughout the years.
Because also this Ultra is really complicated. Look at this.
However,
That's like what
on January 13th, 2021, speedrunner Arthur would become the
One,
first human to successfully
two.
nail the Rainbow Road Ultra shortcut.
you need
in
3
time
mushrooms.
lapse, setting not only a new individual lap record,
This is
but also a new 3-lap.
Yeah, this is like IL.
as well. Since then, no one has nailed
Yeah,
the
it's a
Ultra shortcut,
relatively
or
normal
beaten
skip curve
Arthur's
wild wounds.
times yet.
Yeah.
It's unlikely that anyone will for a very long time. It's also worth noting that just a few weeks earlier, prominent tasser Malio had discovered a method to perform the Ultra shortcut using just 1 mushroom, allowing for it to be nailed 3 times within a single race.
Ooh.
Unlike the Weather Tango, however, the inputs required are far too precise for a human to nail the trick without using all 3 shrooms.
That's so
So
cool.
sadly, a 3 out of 3 will remain task only
Task
for the
only.
foreseeable future.
Dang.
But what if you were to try to attempt a trick with similar strictness in regards to precision in a full game speed run? Up until
Wait,
this
what
point,
the hell is that
the tricks
skip?
I've mentioned are for very short speed runs
How did
where
he
you
make
just
it?
try again right away. But what if you had to perform a clip so precise, where your position had to be perfect, down to the millionths of a unit?
This one
and
looks
it's 20
terrifying.
minutes deep in an hour-long speed run.
How?
Welcome to Banjo-Kazooie Any Percent. In this speedrun, you need to collect 810 notes in order to open up the final door to the final boss fight with Gruntilda. Oh yeah, and like 6 Jiggies. In a normal playthrough, you need to collect a vast
Just
majority
6
of the game's
Jiggies.
main collectible, Jiggies, in order to unlock all 9 levels, where in each level there contains 100 notes, which are required to open up several note doors along your journey, including the final one that requires 810 notes. The note door cannot be skipped, but with the use of several out-of-bounds glitches, Banjo and Kazooie can enter all but 2 levels without any Jiggies.
Yeah,
The most
Banjo-Kazooie
difficult
just
clip,
seems like the
however,
type of
is
game to
early
me
Mad
where like
Monster
I would
Mansion.
slowly lose
In
my
early
mind.
2020, a new type of
Unless the collectibles were actually that
where at
like
extremely
good,
precise locations,
you know?
it is possible to clip through floors and enter loading zones. Following this discovery, Glitch Hunter, the 8-bit beast, wrote a program in order to find the precise position and angle required to clip into the Mad Monster Mansion, one of the only levels that couldn't be accessed early through glitches up until that point. Come June 27th, 8-bit was post a viable setup that worked on console. The tasser Ring Rush posted a setup that was a minute faster than the previous one. When pulled off correctly, the trick could save up to 4 minutes in the any percent category. Enough time to push the game under 1 hour,
Ooh.
but it was no walk in the park.
I feel like
setup
collectible
required
and CPD more
precise
casual would be fun.
pause-buffered
Yeah.
first-person camera movement, as well as frame-perfect techniques, such as punch canceling. It's quite ridiculous, but at least you could take your time to perform the setup correctly and optimize your execution later. When it comes to other frame-perfect techniques, however, sometimes there's
This
no
angle-
room for a breather.
This angle is
In Super
my
Mario
God.
Odyssey's minimum capture speedrun, players attempt to speedrun the game while only capturing entities with Cappy a total of 3 times. The run features several frame-perfect out-of-bounds clips, frame-perfect Cappy teleportation, all
minimum
while
capture.
combining two
Minimum
controllers
capture Mario
simultaneously.
is an insane
Yet, as these
achievement.
crazy tricks were
I remember this
implemented
one.
and the capture counts lowered, one thing remained the same for the past
Please be
2
the
years.
funny. Yes.
The nut jump is easily the hardest trick in the run. Exclusive in version 1.0 of Mario Odyssey, this trick allows Mario to gain infinite height using a wet nut.
Yeah.
When this giant nut is wet, it gains the strange property of being able to repeatedly be caught mid-air.
Wet nut
Minimum
jump.
capture speedruns. This is used to
Gotta
set
love the
final
names of these
pylon
things.
capture just before the Mecha Brutal fight in Bowser's
Yep.
Kingdom.
Yep.
However,
Yup,
in
yup,
order to
yup,
catch the
yup,
nut again
yup,
after throwing
yup.
it, you must input a frame-perfect dive, catch it, throw, dive frame perfectly,
It's the nut jump.
rinse and repeat for several dozen times until you reach the top. This takes quite a lot of practice and is not only a huge roadblock for newbies to the category, but also an infuriating run killer for veteran runners.
Whoa.
The nut jump was
Good
first
save.
implemented in late 2018
Jiggling the
when
wet
speedrunner
nut.
Grady completed the first 13 captures run using this trick.
There's a lot of jokes
And the
that we could
speedrun
make
hasn't
about
been the same ever
nuts.
since. With ideal
Like a lot of
execution,
them.
though, the nut jump takes under a minute. And you're also just
Like a
going
lot
up
of
in a
them.
straight line, worrying only about hitting a nice rhythm. Several frame perfect inputs, yes. But at least it's not over 200 frame perfect inputs over the course of several minutes, like in The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. If you want to
Oh
have a
no.
chance at getting a competitive time in speedrunning Wind Waker and not automatically be 10 minutes slower than the very best, you'll need to perform a manual super swim at the very start of the run. Throughout the
just throw them
speedrun,
away?
Super
Yeah.
swimming is a common glitch used to travel across the Great Sea at lightning speeds, using the assistance of glitches such as Wind Waker storage in the original GameCube version, or item sliding with the grappling hook in the HD remake. At the start of the game in Outset Island, however, you'll have none of those items, meaning that in
Look at
order
him
to
go.
super swim, you'll need to frame perfectly turn 180 degrees every frame while swimming in order to build up enough speed. When swimming in the opposite direction on the first frame, Link gains 3.
Yeah, at least you only need to juggle a
If he
single nut.
continues in that direction for another frame, he loses 3 frames of speed, resulting in a net 0 speed gain. In November 2017, Wind Waker speedrunners began experimenting with manual super swimming, using frame-perfect pausing and buffering opposite inputs on the control stick. Once Link reached 550 units of speed,
Look at him
the camera
go.
would lock in place to where just holding up on the control stick would charge up speed. Once runners got good at practicing this, it soon became a viable trick for both Wind Waker HD and SD speedrunning, although it proved to be quite the challenge. Not only would you need to do hundreds of frame-perfect pause
Super
buttons over the
swimming's
course of
wild,
several
but I think it's
minutes,
great.
but you would also need to precisely refill Link's air meter along the coast.
If I ever
halfway
see the
through
one
super
try to
swim,
face through a
all
wall
while
by
trying
ramming
not
into a
to
corner
completely
repeatedly, that'll
lose
make
all the speed you built up.
Yeah.
And as if that didn't sound wild enough, things got crazier in the GameCube
Pausa.
version in 2020 when speedrunners such as
Oh.
Link7 and Demon began doing unbuffered manual super swimming.
Oh my
Involving moving
god.
the stick up and down at a rate close to 20 times per second. As you can imagine, this method is very physically demanding, but charging up the super swim unbuffered
Dingus.
saved about 2 minutes over unbuffered, and thus the top runners began to partially implement it in the speedruns, before eventually doing the trick entirely unbuffered.
That
It's
sounds
one of the most
terrible.
physically demanding tricks in all of speedrunning.
I would never want to
It
do
shows
this. I
that it
hate
is
this.
good for building up arm muscle.
Oh my god.
As strenuous as manual super swimming is, At least it's relatively mindless exercise. At least, compared to writing literal code with Koopa shells, blocks, Yoshi, and fireballs.
The Super Mario World skip! I love this one!
Super Mario World's credits warp is
Credits
honestly
warp!
a technical marvel within speedrunning. It allows Mario to write and execute arbitrary code within the game as a means of warping from one of the first levels in the game to the end credits. This is accomplished using an SNES multitap, with several controllers attached with specific inputs taped down, as well as position-perfect Koopa Troopa stomps, shell positioning, throws, Yoshi blocks...
God, does look cause some long-term injuries? Absolutely.
Fireball spitting. The first time a human successfully pulled off this credits warp on console was on January 21st, 2015.
I was there! I saw him do this!
World enthusiast, Seftling, performed it, beating Super Mario World in just under 6 minutes. Over the years, the fastest setup has changed, and performing
World
credits warp
record.
has become less about taking the time to set up the necessary components to a near incomprehensible sequence of 41 seconds of gameplay, consisting of several frame-perfect and position-perfect inputs which make the warp possible. As speedruns of the category have gotten faster, the less consistent successful runs were. But in spite of this run's absurd difficulty, it's less than a minute, meaning that despite the impeccable precision required to complete a single run, you can always try again right away.
42 seconds,
Not to
sheesh.
mention, it's performed in a simple two-dimensional plane. But what if you were to perform something similar to this, but it was in the third dimension, where precise angles and coordinates could make...
Yeah, and then people used it to put Flappy Bird
Ever
into the
since
game.
fall
That was
of
funny.
2019,
That
when
was also
glitches
very
and stuff
funny.
discovered stale reference manipulation, or SRM for short, speedruns of the N64 Zelda games haven't been the same since. This is by far the most powerful glitch in both Ocarina of Time
Oh, what
and
the heck?
Majora's Mask, and is incredibly complex, enough to warrant its own dedicated video on this channel in the near
What's Link
future.
doing?
But to
Someone tell
quickly
me.
Summarize SRM. It allows you to manipulate the game's memory by performing specific actions before unloading a held object through the loading plane. This allows the reference of the unloaded object to become stale, and be filled in with another reference depending on position and angle. This is used in various speedruns to obtain several items much earlier than intended, as well as obtain glitchy items, such as
What
the
the
F-boots, which normally aren't obtainable, and allow Link to float in the air from a side hop, and even wrong warp to different locations in the game, and even execute arbitrary code similar to Mario World. Various uses of SRM are used in several of the game's categories. The most infamous and volatile uses of SRM are performed in Ocarina of Time's 100% category, an incredibly brutal gauntlet filled with several difficult wrong warps, which are both position and angle perfect, and have shaved off half an hour out of a 3.5 hour run. Setups of these warps exist and are performed in full game runs, but the precision required to successfully nail these wrong warps is extreme, where the slightest position
The
error
endurance
can
is
cause
terrible.
soft lock or the game crashing. This makes the speedrun incredibly unstable, meaning that until you reach the final Ganon fight, the run is always at risk of dying due to a crash or a soft lock. As daunting as this sounds, runners willingly run 100% with these incredibly tight setups and warps, as it's possible to learn and gain some level of consistency. Other speedrunners aren't so lucky, as is the case with Super Mario 64 120 Star.
Ooh,
In
okay.
the 120 star speedrun, runners collect the star atop the house in Rainbow Ride alongside the 100 coin star. However, they must ride a magic carpet in order to reach the top of the house for nearly a minute. This is obviously slower than not using the carpet, but is consistent and safe. To reach the top of the house without the carpet
Alright,
is
so what's the-
downright preposterous.
Alright, so what's the unsafe
To
method?
do so, you must pick up the bob-omb atop the ship on the other side of the map, throw it and catch it while it's at its biggest size before exploding to stop the explosion and give Mario lots of backward speed. Mario is then navigated to a place where he can drop the bob-omb in a precise manner to prevent it from ever exploding. Re-grab it while Mario's sliding off of a ledge to carry the bob-omb without using his hands so he can use the majority of his moveset once more. While this is happening, he is continuously being pushed back, and with careful navigation, he can travel to a warp location which teleports him to the house's balcony. From there, Mario conserves the speed and can perform a complex series of glitchy wall kicks along a house in order to reach the star without the carpet.
What?
This strat was first implemented in a TAS in
What is this
over a
task?
minute. Several years later in 2019, top runners such as Cheese were able to perform the trick using save states. But so far,
Oh my
only
God.
one person, Zaya, has successfully managed to perform carpetless on console without save states.
Wow.
This trick will likely be used in individual star speedruns, but will be considered way too difficult to go for in full game runs. Especially since there's several places where you can mess up.
Man, his momentum
during
is
the final 5
weird.
minutes of the run too, so the risk heavily outweighs the reward. Throughout this video, I've gone over some pretty insane tricks.
What in the
I've
fresh
saved
hell?
The longest, most tedious, and mind-boggling glitch used in actual speedruns for last.
Okay, hit
Very
me.
recently,
How bad is this
in
gonna
the Breath of
go?
the Wild speedrunning community, glitch hunter Legend of Link discovered a fascinating new glitch known as New Game Plus. This trick allows the Great Plateau tutorial to be skipped from a fresh save file, as well as allowing for several duplicated items, as well as the Bow of Light outside of the final boss fight with infinite ammo and godlike power. For long runs such as the infamous 100% speedrun, it easily saves over a couple of hours. The catch, however, is that the setup takes well over an hour, has to be performed before all the speedrun attempts in the categories that allow it, contains several frame-perfect sequences, all while losing the ability to save the game. And if you die during the setup, you have to start it all over again.
That's terrible.
Fellow lowest percent contributor and Zelda speedrunner, Linka7 has an excellent video
Sonic
covering the
Adventure got
setup in great detail. So if you'd like to know more details, I suggest you check that video out. This glitch is incredibly absurd, but incredibly useful too. As tedious and off-putting as it may sound to many, there have been some speedrunners who have been creating a new
I wanna hear
100%
this.
route with New Game Plus. So expect to see a few people running the category with this trick in the near
Wait,
future.
100%? What? Oh.
Speedrunning tricks can be incredibly hard at times.
Wait,
They
it's
can be
Breath of the
so
Wild,
daunting and
though.
difficult that'll prevent a vast majority
No.
of people from ever attempting these tricks. Yet,
Oh, it's the Coconut
part of
Mall
what
skip.
makes speedrunning so great.
This one's fun.
The speedrunners who take their time to learn these glitches or complex movement do so out of the love for speedrunning, and push speedruns to not only become faster with each passing year, but to put on a fantastic
Look
show
up
for
Super-
the viewers
what
at
was it?
home. Whether it be live at a charity marathon
Super
in front
Metroid
of
Full
thousands
Halfie?
of viewers, or for the few
Yeah, give me a second.
Bam, full halfie. Sweet.
That's...
That
I've-
is so awesome.
I've
All right, guys.
seen it,
Later.
but sweet cheese. Oh my god. I would never. That's good though. That's really good though. Okay. Now we can start with like the regular old videos, and we're gonna learn about the funny ball today. The funny ball. Everybody cheer for the funny orb. You know it. You are afraid of it. It's the demon core. Let's go. Be scared.
In 1946, a P-239 plutonium core scheduled for detonation.
I'd cover that
of a
orb, but
nuclear
you're not
bomb
supposed to
was
cover the
harmlessly
orb.
melted down and reintegrated into the United States' nuclear stockpile. That was the end of a 14-pound metallic sphere that had killed 2 scientists not 11 months before. This is the true story of the Demon Core. The spheres of atomic material that had obliterated the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki would have easily fit in your hand, and they were light enough to carry. Because of the extreme levels of radiation coming from them, the cores were carried around in secure containers, but curious physicists reported that the cores were disturbingly warm to the touch. Both the Little Boy and Fat Man nuclear bombs...
Another ad would have been hilarious. It was for
uranium and plutonium respectively, meaning that no
It should have been for the
self-sustaining
Barbie
nuclear
one.
reaction would be possible with the spheres alone, and the nickel plating that covered them would prevent most of the escaping radiation from harming them.
Ew.
The real harm comes later. The terrible explosions that Little Boy and Fat Man are famous for only happen when a nuclear core goes critical, using directed conventional explosives to artificially induce a critical mass. This meant literally compressing a plutonium or uranium sphere into a much smaller volume with explosions. Now,
That
neutrons
is the
emitted from
worst-looking
natural
soccer ball
radioactivity would be much more
I
likely
could
to go
possibly
on and
imagine.
impact other atoms before escaping, leading to a chain reaction of exponentially more
So if you
and more
describe
atoms
mid-minute long
releasing
chain of ads,
tremendous
doesn't skip you
energy.
any of them still. That's
The heart of an
bull.
atomic blast is a radioactive
sorry,
core filled
Rose.
with atoms poised like rat traps. All the bomb itself does is force one of those traps to snap.
That's messed up. But also, thank you for the sub.
The so-called Demon Core was the third core of fissionable nuclear material made during the World War II era. It was also supposed to be dropped on Japan, but after the Empire's prompt surrender following the obliteration of Nagasaki, the core had no immediate military use. Instead, a physicist working at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico after the war decided to use the remaining core to figure out just what it takes to make a core like this go critical. When Otto Robert Frisch first arrived in the United States, he was placed at Los Alamos to study neutron multiplication in uranium and plutonium. These elements naturally radiate neutrons in the process of nuclear decay, and as we said, if there is enough of the radioactive element close enough together, these neutrons can go on to cause the rat trap style reaction as neutrons slam more neutrons free from other atoms. However, there is
And then shit gets
another way to force
crazy.
criticality other than just having a giant sphere of plutonium, which would be hard to make. It turns out that if you use a very thick material to reflect neutrons coming out of the material back upon itself, like a mirror would, a self-sustaining reaction can occur with substantially less plutonium or uranium. Even though an explosion might not happen after criticality is reached
Cool
in all
creepy web series
cases,
from the Monument.
a
It's
deadly
called
blast of radiation certainly could. And that's exactly
Radiation
what
to make things invisible?
By 1944, Frisch was leading the Critical
Spooky.
Assembly Group at Los Alamos and started a dangerous series of near-criticality testing. The physicists in the group wanted to use neutron-reflective materials around spheres of plutonium and uranium to see just how close they could get to going critical, without explosives and without going over the edge. Commenting on the inherent risk of experiments of this kind, legendary physicist Richard Feynman reportedly said that the experiments were like, quote, tickling the tail of a sleeping dragon, end quote. But even with the very real possibility of being roasted alive by the radioactive fire of a failed criticality test, the tickling the dragon's tail experiments continued. Within 2 years, neutron reflection experiments on the Demon Core would claim the lives of two scientists, Harry K. Daghlian Jr. and Louis Slotin, in almost the exact same way. On August 21, 1945, Harry K. Daghlian Jr. was conducting a criticality experiment with the Demon Core. He was placing tungsten carbide bricks around the mass of plutonium to see how many bricks and in what orientation it would take to reflect enough neutrons to cause the core to go critical. That afternoon, using a Geiger counter-like device to measure the radiation coming off of the plutonium, he got close enough to criticality that he decided to end the experiment. Now, this result should have been worth just a few graphite streaks in a notebook and maybe a beer at the local bar with the other physicists, but Daghlian was curious. Later that night, he returned, alone, to his assembly for another test.
No. No.
Like the test before, Daghlian
Oh,
created
no.
an orientation of bricks that his measuring device told him was nearly critical. As he was placing one last brick, the measuring device indicated that the core would go critical if he continued on the assembly. The dragon would wake up. So cautiously, he began removing the final brick, and then he dropped it.
Dong.
The moment the brick hit the assembly, the Demon Core instantly went supercritical. And according to Daghlian, there was a blast of blue light and a wave of heat. Daghlian reacted quickly, though, and used his right hand to knock the dropped brick all the way to the floor. In those fractions of a second, Harry had received a fatal dose of radiation. In fact, he had endured what was likely the highest acute dose of radiation of any human in history. 25 days
Probably
later,
gross.
Daghlian fell into a coma and
Gross,
died from
gross,
organ
gross
failure
thing.
owing to severe radiation poisoning.
Yeah.
This photo, taken 9 days after the accident by medical
You
staff,
might wanna look away
is of the
if you're
hand that
not-
Harry had used to stop the Demon Core.
Yeah.
He was 24.
Also sucks that he was 24.
Harry
He was very young.
completely alone and experimenting in the lab that night, A security guard, Private Robert J. Hemmerly, was also sitting at his desk next to Doglian reading his newspaper.
Glasses removal
Hemmerly died
is needed.
3 years after Doglian Jr. from what is now considered to be radiation-caused leukemia. He was 29 and the father of 2 at the time of exposure. Harry K. Doglian
Damn.
Jr. was the first official fatality from a criticality accident and the first American casualty of the atomic age. He had arranged to have his body donated to science after his inevitable end so that scientists could study the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. During the 25 days after
Wait, can't they not do
Doglian's
that?
colleague Louis Sloan
He's, like, too
spent many
radioactive,
hours
isn't
at
he?
his bedside, comforting the 24-year-old as radiation poisoning slowly claimed him. Exactly 7 months later, in the same hospital, Louis Sloan.
I'm on the worst
suffered the
criticality
exact
accident was
same
the Japanese guy poured liquid uranium into a large amount. What? They what?
By 1946, physicist Louis Slotin had taken over the critical assembly.
Lunar, what is the name of that
Though the
incident? I need to
criticality
know more.
experiments were moved from the Omega
What?
site at Los Alamos to the Palajito laboratory. The dangerous nature of the experiments did not change. In addition to Feynman's continued warnings, physicist Enrico Fermi said that, quote, "Keep doing that experiment that way, and you'll be dead within a year." But Louis Slotin wasn't worried, and the experiments continued.
I mean, a lot of
On
other...
May 21st, 1946, Slotin was conducting
That's-
another criticality experiment with the Demon Core. This time, though, instead of using tungsten bricks, Slotin was testing the critical point of the core by placing it inside 2 half spheres made of beryllium and lowering those halves until there was just a sliver of space before the sphere was complete. If the core was completely enclosed, the
Ooh,
reflection of
okay.
neutrons would be total, and the
Tokaimura
dragon
criticality
would wake again.
Time to read.
The local expert among experts, Slotin was reportedly brash in his experimental protocols. In his signature pair of blue jeans and cowboy boots, Slotin would perform the criticality tests without the fail-safe spacers that would sit on the half spheres and keep it from ever completely closing. Instead, he would put his bare hand on the top half sphere and attempt to lower it using only the blade of a flathead
What the heck?
screwdriver.
Also,
That way he-
Also, I never understood why you would do an experiment like this in such a manner. Like, this is like, bro, it's like your hands are out. And, like, they know about radiation, so it's like, they know what they're touching. So it's always the part that got me.
he could get much closer to criticality, and Slotin had successfully completed this experiment dozens of times. The afternoon of the accident, Louis Slotin was conducting the same screwdriver experiment as 7 other colleagues recorded and watched. It was
40s,
just like the
50s
test
era
before, but
hardman
for whatever
attitude.
reason,
Yeah,
This time, the screwdriver slipped.
we
The moment the spheres touched, the demon core went prompt critical. The reflected neutrons coming from the plutonium inside the sphere instantly initiated supercriticality. Like the Doglian accident, there was a flash of blue light and a wave of the dragon's heat before Slotin could flip the top half sphere off of the assembly. Naturally, the 7 other scientists in the room ran out as fast as they could as the accident occurred, but Slotin shouted them all to get back and tossed them a stick of chalk. He told them each to mark down precisely where they were standing. By establishing their positions relative to the demon core, Slotin would be able to calculate just how much radiation each person had just absorbed, and
I feel bad for the people on the edge who are like so close to just getting out of there.
how much their lives had just been shortened. According to physicist Raymer Schreiber, who was present in the room with Slotin that day, Slotin's first words immediately after the incident were, quote, "Well, that does it." Louis Slotin died of severe radiation poisoning 9 days later at the age of 35.
Sheesh.
He died in the same hospital as Harry Doglian Jr. on another Tuesday the 21st as a result of the same accident with the same hunk of radioactive material. They even were cared for by the same nurse. The demonstration that day was supposed to be the final demonstration with the core before it was used in a test detonation, and it was. In those few moments, Louis Slotin had been exposed to over 1,000 rads of radiation from the neutrons and gamma rays blasting out of the demon core. This is possibly the highest dose of radiation any human has ever taken. As a comparison, 1,000 meters from ground zero in Hiroshima, the neutron radiation was measured as less than half of what Slotin had absorbed in those fractions of a second.
Huh.
Since 1945, over 60 criticality accidents have been recorded, leading to at least 21 deaths in facilities and labs all around the world. The flash of blue light that so often accompanies these incidents is an indication of the invisible radiation being released. As high energy
That moment
particles
knowing you're
crash through the
already
air,
dead.
like these
Yeah,
particles
that's like
exiting
that's
a
scary,
cyclotron,
man.
They excite the air molecules.
Macho, you
The only
came
way for
at
these
like
molecules to
the
return to
worst
low-
time ever. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. How's it going? Can a mod shout out Macho, my friend, my man? How are you holding up on this swole day of yours? Where's your belt? Let me. Sorry, Captain. Let me get my belt. Hold up. It's so big. I gotta shrink it down. You know, I'm gonna wear it today. I'm gonna wear my belt today. Wait. There we go. Like a champ. Eh. That's what we should. It's a weird time because we're watching videos about like nuclear like accidents, and I'm like, I can't be excited right now. This is scary. People died.
Lower energy state is to release some radiation of their
But
own.
hello, everybody.
Photons of
Welcome.
light.
I hope you guys
But
enjoy your
while
time.
gases can absorb and re-emit the energy imparted to it by nuclear material, human bodies cannot. Instead, particles and gamma rays flying out of the nuclear cores rip electrons from the molecules.
And also, this
that
is why
make
you
up
don't touch
and
anything
smash your
nuclear
cellular
related.
machinery beyond repair.
Except the Fallout
When enough
games,
molecular damage is
guess.
done,
If you
radiation sickness can manifest
if you like
itself
those.
as everything from
Time to check the
vomiting and
nuclear
diarrhea
reactor. Let's grab the
to
screwdriver.
blisters,
Don't drop it.
inflammation,
Please don't drop it.
cognition, widespread organ failure, confusion, nausea, high fever, dizziness. 5
Everything.
weeks later, on July 1st, 1946, a different
Nuclear radiation is truly the form of this man has every disease. Like everything.
nuclear
You gotta
core
stream
was
wrestling?
destroyed in a 23
Later.
kiloton air-deployed
Have a
nuclear
good
weapon
one.
over Bikini Atoll. It was supposed to be the end of the Demon Core. Instead, the Demon Core was melted down and redistributed
Sure.
throughout the rest of the United States stockpile, effectively getting a brand new half-life. Until next time.
So, moral of the story is it still exists and it's out there and it's the
Yeah.
worst.
Story time with Kyle's a little serious, huh? Thank you so much
Hey, it's
to
the funny
very many staff
basilisk.
at the facility
Love
for
him.
the direct and substantial support in the creation of this here video. Today, especially, I want to recognize research assistant Roy.
Usually has
He's
interesting
definitely
things to
not
say
the
after
Pokemon,
credits,
and Visiting
so I
Scholar
wanna hear
Max
this.
Concurrent. Oh, maximum at the same time is what your parents should have named you. If you want to join the facility, if you want to get a lab coat, get on the staff, you want to talk to me in our Discord, give me episode ideas, get episodes.
I have a very
early,
nice
join our
lab
Magic
coat
the
that I have in my
Gathering,
room
D&D nights,
that I
all
use
this
for
great, great
cosplay.
stuff.
It's an actual lab coat.
Patreon.com/Kyle
I feel like I should probably use it for
Support the
something.
Facility just enough. Get your name on RA here each and every week. As you can see, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of you, so I don't know how I'm going to pass the. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fun. These accidents and their stories. As I've been saying for weeks, you know my thoughts on nuclear weapons. They're terrible, terribly destructive. I don't think we should ever use them. I don't think we should even have them. If you want to know more of my thoughts, you can go to the end of history video back on the channel. And look, I could lighten the mood here with some, hey, it's fun Kyle Science Guy factoid, but I'm not going to, okay? I could tell you that according to a recent study, platypuses are fluorescent. But
Ooh.
I wouldn't say that. I want you to sit here and think about it. I wouldn't say anything ridiculous like that about platypubes.
Platypuses are fluorescent I think it's under
Thanks for watching.
blue light? Elsai Kongru. How did you know I cosplayed Mayuri at some point? I did with my ex. It was a long time ago. I think I still have the Mayuri hat. It doesn't fit me anymore, but I have it. I had Dr. Pepper too, mainly also because I like Dr. Pepper as a drink. So, don't blame me for that. Anyway, we're getting out of the serious zone. We're going back into Sillyville, and watching this man, quote unquote, overpowering his vacuum, his hand vacuum. Let's see how he does it. And I guess in theory you could do it yourself too, if you want. I guess. Here goes nothing.
So this is my vacuum cleaner that at this point is slowly dying. You see, first I had to remove its internal battery pack because its capacity was dropping quickly, and instead replaced it with a Makita battery adapter and fitting battery pack.
On one hand, that's a really good mod. On the other hand, you could just replace the batteries. But I'm not going to be the judge of that because this is funny because you get to like have a holster of Makita batteries and you can slot them in like you're holding a weapon.
And then also, the suction power of this thing decreased for reasons unknown. And that was the moment my girlfriend said, "Just throw this thing away and get a new one. I need a better vacuum cleaner." And yes, she talks with subtitles. But anyway, I didn't feel like throwing this thing away. Because not only is e-waste becoming more and more of a problem nowadays, but also because I have tons of motors laying around looking for a job. And all that is left for a vacuum motor to work is a fitting impeller, which is also just plastic that I can 3D print right at home. So in this video, in order to celebrate Earth Day,
We're kind of late on that.
to create my own vacuum cleaner motor out of things that I have laying around at home, in order to hopefully renew my vacuum cleaner. Let's get started.
I love Great Scott
This
as a
video is
channel.
sponsored
Like
by the Element
it's a
14 community,
you know, maker channels are
which
fun.
does
I like
all
maker
kinds of
channels.
awesome electronic how-tos, giveaways, contests, videos, and much more. Definitely check them out. And this time I will be part of their team. So feel free to head over to the Element 14 community
Sponsor
to
spot.
get more details
Sponsor
about this
spot.
project
Skip
or
being
ask
over.
questions.
Sponsor spot.
I will see you there.
Anyway,
Now first off, I had to find out what my vacuum was still capable of for reference. And for that, I use such an anemometer. That basically tells me how fast the integrated fan spins in meter per second. And with a freshly charged battery pack that outputs around 20 volts, I was able to reach a speed of around 4.8 meter per second normally. And when we take this
Okay.
thing apart and position the meter as close as possible to the impeller, we get around 5.5, which are the values I will need to beat. To do that, I firstly gathered my collection of brushless DC motors. Now the big difference to the so far used brush DC motor of my vacuum is, like the name implies, the utilized carbon brushes that do create some sparks while the motor is rotating.
it's tiny and
Those
it's in there,
sparks
and
not
that's
only shorten
scary.
the lifespan of such a DC motor.
Oh God, why does a
also
drill
its
do that?
efficiency,
Oh, I
which
hate that.
will be an advantage of my BLDC motor system if it works out in the end. But before getting to that, I first had to decide on one motor. And the most important criteria for that is the RPM. You see, the faster such a vacuum cleaner impeller spins, the more suction power gets created. Meaning, we want something at least as fast as the original motor that spins with approximately 26,000 RPM.
Vacuum go
Now, to
burr.
get the RPM from a BLDC motor, we got the kV rating. That multiplied by the voltage equals our RPM.
Ooh, math.
So we need something like 1300 kV. Sadly though,
Math.
the closest motor I got
Increase
that
the
came with a
suck
similar size
factor.
and power rating as the original one only came with 900 kV, which will hopefully be enough. We will see.
18,000
And last but not
then.
least, of course, to let the motor
Next
spin,
guy, Simon the
we
Magpie did
also
follow up to the
need a
Mickey
C,
Pedalville where he makes it
of
polyphonic.
which I pretty much
Woo!
only had
Polyphonic
two
Mickey.
fitting
Neat.
ones because of the high voltage applied by the battery pack. And initially I wanted to use this super basic one, since it only requires a potentiometer to adjust the speeds. But as you can see, it didn't want it to cooperate,
Aw.
so it flew right back into its drawer.
Blip.
So instead I went with this one, which as you can see performs wonderfully. And the only problem with it is that it requires a servo control signal to fine adjust the speeds, which is common for ECs though, and about which we will worry about later. Because for now we got a fitting motor spinning, and I was getting fired up to make my own impeller. But as soon as I realized that there are several kinds of impeller designs, I was first off very confused.
They all look terrifying.
But eventually I decided on such a specific centrifugal design, because it not only looks cool, but also because RC Test Flight tested such a design in a video and it performed pretty well. Definitely check that out. So I started my CAD
Stealing
software
content.
and had immediately no idea how to pull this off, because so far I've only been designing fancy boxes for electronics projects.
Ooh, fancy box.
But thankfully, YouTube is there for you when you need to learn something new.
Yeah.
And thus, after taking some real-world measurements of my old motor, impeller, vacuum enclosure, and new BLDC motor, I created my first rough prototypes, which includes the impeller and motor mounts. And after 3D printing them with PLA filaments, I was rather happy to see that the motor fit perfectly inside the holder, as well as the impeller on it, meaning it was time for the first test run.
Good so far.
Which came with a bit of excessive rubbing that you can clearly
Blah, blah, blah.
hear, but we still got an airflow going. Nice.
I feel like if it's rubbing like that, he should at least get.
The 3D print would fit inside the
He should get like,
enclosure,
I don't know,
which they did perfectly.
grease
I
or
wanted
something.
to go over to my CAD software to improve
Why?
the amount with
Because
air holes
you know
and create a
the
top
the
piece
plastic
for
rubbing against itself is
ultimately altogether
sounds
look like
terrible.
this.
Sounds horrifying.
And after once again 3D printing everything and assembling it all, this time with all the screws in place for safety and balance reasons, I was rather happy about the results, which fit
does
very
look
snugly
snazzy as
and
a replacement.
satisfying inside the vacuum enclosure. So it was time for the first proper test, which initially started out very promising, by reaching a speed of 4.5 meter per second with an input power of around 54 watts, which in direct comparison to the vacuum motor from before, that are of course also measured at different power levels,
It's more
would
intense, so
equal
that's
a power drop of around 40 watts for the same suction power.
ooh efficiency.
Nice. But sadly, this success turned into a failure nightmare very quickly, because after 2 minutes of testing, the system became very loud, unstable and vibrated.
Oh, mood.
The reason for that was that the impeller got more or less stuck, and the first reason for that was that the motor got very hot and
That's
therefore deformed the PLA filament.
very spicy.
The second reason though was even worse, because it appears like some magnets of the motor's rotor got pushed downwards, and thus hindered the motor's movements, which is honestly something I've never seen before when it comes to BLDC motors. My solution for now though was pushing the magnets back into place and redesigning the motor mount with more vent holes, to which I later also added some more manually.
I didn't even
In
know
case
they
you're
could do
wondering
this.
Why the motor mount is suddenly black, let me tell you that I switched over to ABS filaments, because it should be able to handle higher temperatures without warping. And after the assembly was once again complete, which this time I had to complement with a bit of hot glue so that the top stays in place, it was time for another test round, which once again started out promising, but quickly came with the same vibration problem as before. This time though,
bad
the
noise.
temperature of the motor was still in the acceptable range, and pretty much the only problem this time was that once again a magnet came loose. So I had no other choice than to take the motor apart, reposition all the magnets, and mix up strong 2-component adhesive to hopefully permanently mount them all in place. And as soon as the glue was dry and a bit filed down, I put it back together, tested it out, and once again assembled the whole motor.
It's funny because
construction once
apparently
again.
Combat
So
Robotics
also
also
once
does
again
this.
find out
They call it like
that this
hardening the
thing
motors
still did not work perfectly
because they'd
fine.
shatter under pressure and
This
stuff.
time it seems like the top piece was too narrow, meaning redesign time, and while I was at it, I 3D printed the remaining parts in ABS as
Did I
well.
tell at the time CPU was making
And
loud
with that
grinding noise,
being
soft with
done,
fan still
I
did it,
moved
so I
on
get
to finally a successful test, in
Still
which I
did any
reached the
fragment?
speeds of 5
No, that would
meters
mean
per
that
second
something
without
is-
too much trouble or problems.
It was actually a plastic cable.
And that was
Yeah,
my
it's
cue
that's
to
usually a
make this whole
cable.
project
It
into
was
a
like,
vacuum and
yeah,
project.
funny noises is
But of
cables. So I'm
course,
like,
my silver
oh.
signal generator was a bit too big for that. To replace it, I used an old Arduino Pro Mini board I had laying around, to which I simply added a potentiometer and some Arduino codes in order to let it spit out an adjustable servo signal. After then drilling a hole for the potentiometer and securing it in place along with some nice labels, all that was left to do was wiring everything up, closing everything up, and getting ready for the last tests, in which I went up to 100%, aka 120 watts at 20 volts.
Ooh, okay.
With that, the vacuum reached a speed of 4.5 meter per second, which is sadly a bit less than what the original motor could do,
Rip.
but it also drew 60 watts less power to do that. So all in all, this is obviously not a perfect result.
Can't relate to
but
these
for
neat-ass
me,
chanter makers.
definitely a big success.
You gotta
because
clean up,
this was
because
all trial and
space
error
saving
for
is
me,
important.
since I'm not a mechanical engineer. And in case you're wondering, my girlfriend said that the difference to the original motor is sadly noticeable,
Aw.
and she requested a better solution, which I will hopefully come up with soon.
The worst part about this is that he
But
did all this and it
anyway,
failed the
that
girlfriend
being
test.
said,
So
I hope you enjoyed this
that's
video.
the part that hurts the
And
most.
if you're looking for more suction power and want to
I bust my
test
switch a
some
bit,
things on your
swap
own,
the touchscreen.
then
Oh,
you
I
can
haven't even
always
touched.
try out
I haven't
the higher
fixed the
frequency
switch
C motor.
touchscreen on my
As
Switch yet.
always,
I want to,
consider
but
supporting me through
oy, oy, oy.
Patreon to keep the show going. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification
Terrifying.
bell.
Okay, speaking of other
Stay
hacking
creative,
things,
and I will see you next time.
the next one I think is submitted by Sister. I saw this beforehand and I thought it was dumb and I wanted one really bad. But this is a calculator that runs Android and has a touchscreen. I'm not giving you context. I'm just gonna let it play.
This is just me, but every once in a while, I'll see something that is so cheap that I have to buy it no matter how dumb it is. In front of me, I have a calculator that I bought for around $10, and at first glance, it might seem like an unassuming calculator. It can do advanced mathematics, but it has a secret under the hood, and we can see it if we swipe down from the top. This calculator runs on Android, and that means we can probably hack it to run games.
Why? Why does it have Android on it?
First thing that we need to do in this quest is to set this up with USB debugging so we can sideload some apps. With a quick swipe from the top, we can open up the settings menu and then we can go down to system. Here,
It's
we need
just
to go down
default.
to about tablet and then we need to tap the build number a bunch of times to enable the developer option.
This works for
After we
most
do that,
Android
we can head over
debugs,
to
by
the
the
new
way.
developer options menu
And
we
then
can turn
near
on
USB debugging.
One of the first problems that we need to fix is the fact that we don't have a normal home launcher on this calculator. Let's fix that. After we press the home button again, we can now pick the ATV launcher from the menu to break out of this calculator application. Now we're able to get a closer look at the apps that this thing already had.
Now you
installed
have
on
apps on the
but we need to add a bunch of other things to achieve our goal of maiming this into an emulation device. First, I need to see what we're working with, and we can install Ada64 to get a better look at our stats. In here, we can see that this is an all-winner A50 processor, which is an older 32-bit processor, but we do have 1 gigabyte of RAM, which is a lot.
I don't think people have realized. Hold on, buddy. Let me just plug in my mouse into my calculator.
More than I was expecting to see on a purpose-built product like this. One unfortunate thing here is that our internal storage is a bit on the small side, so I hope that we can use a USB drive to expand our storage. We have enough storage space here for our apps and emulators, but we don't have a lot for our ROMs.
It
I read online
has
that this thing has an internal SD card slot, but I
couple
will
of
need to open
gigs,
this up
so
to get
that's
a look
fine.
at it. All in all, not a bad configuration for a calculator. We've got a rooted system running on Android 9, and the thermals don't seem bad so far. It's also pretty cool that this thing has full touchscreen support, which is a nice fallback option for emulation. Off camera, I need to install the emulators that I need for this video, and I need to add some ROMs. Not really sure what this guy can do, since this is a new processor for me, but it should be good enough for some N64, Dreamcast, and maybe some light PSP.
I do just
Before
love that this
we
is
still
still
have some other
just
specs that
a
we need to
calculator.
uncover, and that means we need to open this thing up. Okay, now that we finally have the back shell off, we can see the internal components. For the amount of empty space that we have here, this is a smallish battery at 2,700 milliamp hours. We definitely have more space for a much bigger battery if we wanted to go through the work of sourcing one and hooking it up to the PCB. I think the interesting thing here is that we essentially have a PCB from something like a tablet that appears to have been repurposed into a calculator. You can see that we have the original power buttons and the volume buttons on the side, and these are things that you can't really get to unless you open this up. Kind of a cool
There's
way
an
to
update
recycle some
button there.
older hardware that was probably collecting dust on a shelf. With the CPU shield off, we have a full view of our processor and a couple of other chips. I think this is our Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chip, and these might be our RAM,
Those
but I'm
are
not sure. Anyway, I've gone ahead and installed
probably
a bunch of
RAM.
other stuff, but I do have some unfortunate news that I found out after some additional digging. If we go into this tester application, I was hoping that these calculator keys would generate a key code. If they did generate one, that would mean that they could be mapped inside emulators. As you can see, none of these generate a code. And that is really unfortunate because I was looking forward to using these buttons here to play some simple games. That means our only way to play games on this now would be to use touch, or if we connect a controller to this. Outside of that, I did find out that the SD card slot does not work. I tried about 10 cards or so.
That's
in
even
all
worse.
kinds of different formats, and nothing is recognized with this slot. The good part though is that the USB port can do USB mass storage, so we can use an SD card adapter or a USB drive. Since I already had an SD card prepped and ready, I'm going to use that with an adapter because my internal storage is
I like how this also has an internal USB port section right here.
almost
This
gone
is
to
so
just to
dumb.
kind of make
Why
this
is
a
it
bit
like
easier
this
to
on the
use.
inside?
I've also gone through the process of adding a front end to this with the games that I want to test in this video. For my controller, I'm using an SN30 Pro connected via Bluetooth.
Why have it?
But
I
would
mean,
probably
because
go
it's-
ahead and use a
because it's
hardwired approach to
repurposed
improve
hardware.
latency. This is an older chip after all. But yeah, that means we're finally ready to test this thing out. We're going to start off on the lower end with NES. I've got RoboCop 3 here for our first title, and this thing is obviously going to run as well as you would expect. I have also set the CPU clocks to the maximum,
Yeah, let me
but
plug
it's
this
not something
SD
that we
card into
need
my
for these lower end
calculator.
systems. Now, I am noticing that we do have a bit of stutter in these light games, and I'm not really sure what's causing this, but I am seeing it in a few other systems outside of NES. For example, here's Game Boy with
Game
Metroid
Boy.
2, and it also has some slight stuttering.
Like, I
but
could
this
play
is something
Game
that
Boy
shouldn't happen
and,
with
like,
this
NES
processor.
games
When we
on
move
my,
up to
like,
Game
TI
Boy Advance,
calculator,
we need to use a
so-
lighter GBA core because our processor is a bit on the low side, but we can play these games. The issue is that we now have the occasional stutter and some dips in performance just from these games being a bit demanding. After
Dang.
testing this, I did go back and
getting
disable
worse.
VSync in RA.
Probably
and that
kids'
seems to have
tablets and
improved
stuff.
things a bit,
Exactly,
but
like
I won't have
like
that disabled
budget
for the other RA systems that I
devices.
already filmed. So we do.
I
have
mean,
that
this
same
calculator is,
stuttering,
mind you,
but it's not
$10.
that obvious in certain games that don't have a lot of action, like Pokemon, for example. Super Nintendo was another system that I wanted to take a look at. This processor is a bit on the weak side, but we do have an emulator that we can use in RA. The only downside is that it does have a lot of wonky stuff to it, but the 2002 core can run some of these heavier titles like Super
Ooh.
Mario World, but again, we do have that same stuttering. When we go to Super Mario World 2, this is kind of the pinnacle of Super Nintendo emulation on chips like this, and it's running without a hitch. This is a good sign.
pretty
and
good,
this
actually.
is a title that I usually use to benchmark, but there are other
It's like
heavy
a mass
titles too.
producer Arduino. Yes, like same idea.
We're kind of going in terms of emulation demand, and our next system up from here is actually DS with the Drastic emulator. We have FrameSkip
Let's
enabled without
go!
enhanced 3D resolution, but it's performing pretty well, and I'm not seeing the stuttering that I'm seeing in RA in this emulator. If I were to enable the enhanced 3D rendering option, or if I turned off auto FrameSkip, these games would run a lot slower, so these are the settings that I needed to use on this device.
I mean, it's working.
For Nintendo 64, we need to use a standalone emulator since that one gave the best performance and we're able to get some decent performance out of the titles that I was testing. Obviously, an A7 processor is not going to be enough to play the
It's
full
amazing what
catalog
you
of
can do with
N64
technology
games,
these
but
days.
The usual light ones are not a problem. The cool thing here is that these games are running at native resolution, which is something that you don't usually see on weak hardware like this. Even games like Star Fox 64 run pretty well with some dips here in this first level, but it's
Ooh.
still highly playable on this calculator. I mean, what more could you expect for $10? This thing is already a lot better than I expected when I bought this as a joke.
Ocarina.
But when it comes to Diddy Kong Racing,
Oh no, it's
this
dying.
game ran a bit slower than I thought. I've tested this on
Oh,
other
it's running
A7
at, like,
processors
20.
with a slightly
Oh,
different
no.
GPU than this.
It's struggling.
And it runs better on those processors than it is here. It might be due to the GPU. Now we're in the systems that don't run that well, and Dreamcast is the first one. We really don't have the performance here to play Dreamcast games except for these light ones. This is Power Stone with FrameSkip enabled, and it's kind of chugging along here with some audio crackle.
It's working.
Surprisingly, PS1 is actually pretty bad on this calculator, and now that I'm saying that out loud, it even seems stupid. Anyway, we're using RA again for this, but I would expect that we could get better performance if we used a standalone emulator. These first two titles aren't that bad with the same dips down to 56 FPS that we can see in other systems.
This is getting
but when we go to a heavier game that should run on a 1.5 GHz processor like this, we are underperforming. Tekken 3 has a huge FPS drop down to 46, which is
Yo,
way
you think we
lower
could play
than it should
multi on
be,
this?
since this is a game that can run full speed on other A7 processors
Like, it could play
that
Tekken.
don't even have a GPU.
We could play multi.
As you would expect by now, this processor is not really good enough for PSP. We're starting off here with a 3D based game, and it's kind of chugging along even though we have auto frame skip enabled.
It's
there
getting
are two ways
eaten.
to look at this. Obviously, it's pretty cool that this is even playing at all, but it's not really practical like the other systems were. These 3D titles like Kingdom Hearts are really slow, and it's not really a good experience. Even 2D games like Final Fantasy can have some slowdowns that I didn't expect to see based on my experience with other processors that also use a Cortex A7. So I originally set the goal of trying to get this to run Half-Life 2, but I switched to Doom 3 because I didn't have enough space for the Half-Life 2 file. It probably doesn't even matter because our CPU is on the low end for a gaming device, as is our GPU. Anyway, here's Doom 3. I mean, we're running.
It runs Doom.
We're running at more FPS than you probably thought was
It runs
possible on the
Doom.
calculator. There are times when we can divide our FPS in half and still have a double-digit number, so that's pretty cool. If it's good enough
Think
for the
about that
Switch,
image of
it's
an
good enough for my $10 calculator. To make this game playable, we need to
That
turn
sounds
off a lot of
valid,
graphical
and it sounds like
settings,
something
which
that would
kind of
happen.
makes this game look like a Dreamcast port, but we are able to play it. I mean, it's fully playable at this
an
point in the
Xbox.
game. I can't speak for
Could have
later
done it
on.
on a calculator,
right now,
yeah.
I'm using a controller to play this game, and we do have some dips here and there. If we decrease the resolution a bit, the game looks a lot worse than this, and a lot of the black textures that you can see off in the distance show up a lot closer to the character, but the game runs a bit faster. It just makes the game look like a DOS port, so I didn't want to do it for this video. I did want to have at least one example in this video of playing something handheld. So here we are playing Doom 3 with touch control enabled. The
That
other
looks
thing that I need to
so
point out here about Doom 3 is
fun.
that it does have some sluggish performance when you fire a gun. When you fire, the FPS
Fun.
takes a dive, and it kind of enables like a bullet time mode, which makes it easier and more difficult to play at the same time. Like if you want to get a precise headshot, the bullet time thing really helps because the entire thing runs like a slideshow, but I found that some of these mobs don't want to die when I shoot them. I think they know that I'm playing this on a calculator and they don't want to die a humiliating death. I'll also occasionally fat finger the in-game calculator, which doesn't help things. But yeah, this is Doom 3 running on a calculator, and it definitely fulfills the can it run Doom meme, right? I have to say that I'm really impressed by the thermal performance of this thing. Even with the CPU clocks locked to max,
terrifying.
we never really go up that high on this.
I mean,
and
you
it doesn't
could
feel
run-
that hot to hold in the hand. But I wasn't happy with ending the meme at Doom 3, so we're going to increase it all the way up to Doom Eternal. Obviously, this thing is an Android device, and we can stream whatever we want to it with Steam Link. I think this is simultaneously
he
the
installed
dumbest purchase
Steam
that I've ever
Link
made, while also being something
onto a
that is really
calculator.
impressive for $10. It's not the best quality, but it is playable. I mean, I am playing it, so what more could
that
you
actually
ask?
looks pretty
Yeah, I
good.
hope you enjoyed this random video. This was a pretty cool find, but it's not really practical to go out and buy this. I think the price is a lot higher than $10 now, but it was $10 when I got it.
I
If you
want
enjoyed
one
this video
so
and you wanna see
bad.
more, take a look at a video that I did on a portable Wii handheld that also looks like a giant PSP. Happy gaming, everyone.
I want one so bad. It's so stupid, and the shipping is going to be like $30, so it's not even worth it. But I want it because it looks funny. I don't know. It just looks funny. All right. Speaking of funny devices, are you guys ready for the funny phone? Stream crash right at the end. Oh, dang. Well, I mean, I think it's good now. Still, anyway. Funny phone time from our funny man DankPods. It's the Galaxy Note 7, baby.
Smaznug. So today's tech story, mate, is just, it's pretty epic. I mean, it's like the smartphone, to say it's plateaued isn't fair. You know, tech's always going to keep advancing. But, mate, the 2010s were just insane for smartphones. My relationship with Samsung's a lot different to
Fire
tech nowadays because, you know,
Yeah,
I
you
was
submitted
growing
this
up
one
during
too.
the
Yeah.
dot-com boom, and Samsung
This one's
made
good.
a lot of middling, piddling, Me Too stuff. Oh, you got a candy bar phone? Well, mate, we got a candy bar phone. Oh, you got a QWERTY? Well, mate, we got a QWERTY. Oh, full screen touch phone? Oh, we'll do it too. Yeah. The first Galaxy, I mean, this will get its own video at some point, but this really was still to the old design language of Samsung, which is just give it a lot of the same similar features, put stuff in very similar spots, and then just make it out of cheap rubbish plastic and ship it out for cheap. But Samsung phones, from a design point of view, didn't interest me at all until
Love
like the
these
S6
guys.
and the Edge phones. Finally, Samsung found their own design language. We look at it and go, that's a Samsung. And not only does it look like a Samsung, it looks stinking great. That curved edges and things, so
They're kinda
good.
stretching
Well,
this.
fast forward to meme
Maybe up
year
don't too much.
2016, we get
That might be worth it.
this thing is a beauty. Gosh, this is such a good looking phone. Oh, mate, she's got the doodly doo.
Doodly-doo.
Samsung's first USB-C phone. Like, that is a huge deal. And Apple still hasn't caught up. This is such a modern
Look at this
size, such a
amazing
modern
fire
design,
starter.
even with the old school home button and everything. How cute is that? Just the one camera lens, huh? When this launched and reviewers agreed, this was the best phone ever. Because, you know, great screen, great camera, great UI, great everything, but then really great fires.
Fire.
Yep. This is the original Fire phone, Amazon. Now look,
Fire
devices
starter.
catching fire isn't new. It's not a Samsung invention. Like learning that in 2004, there was a whole bunch of fires going on that got people really worried and concerned. But CNET, they hear of a few phone fires every year, but Note 7s, within a month, they were up to 112 cases. Like, that's more than
That's
a
a lot.
coincidence. That's like, hold up. This is nuts. So Samsung blamed the batteries themselves, you know, apparently not having enough insulation.
Yeah, they should not be touching that.
Samsung said nothing
Oh,
wrong with the
no.
hardware and the software or nothing, it was just the batteries. Apparently there wasn't enough room around the heat seal protective pouch around the battery and its internals. In worst case scenarios, it caused the electrodes inside the battery to crimp, weaken, short circuiting. The liquid that surrounds these lithium batteries is
it out, put it out.
flammable. Well, I mean, this thing
God.
is insanely thin.
The
and
worst part is that-
technology that was smashing into this and
Yo, the
battery-
worst part that people also need to be aware of is that smoke is also toxic. You should not breathe that in. Do not do that.
life being a
I mean, actually, to be honest, it's kind of a general. Hold on, I need to public statement. Do not inhale smoke of any kind. Yeah, just don't. Especially battery smoke. Don't breathe that.
thing. Like phones nowadays, you can run them for 2 or 3 days and get away with it, but back in 2016 you're lucky to get 1 day out of your phone. So this race to smash as much into a phone was at peak at this point. And look, the first fix was really straightforward. Samsung said, oi, just hand in your Note 7 to wherever you got it, mate, and we'll swap you one which has a good battery in it.
Good battery.
Sorry about that. Here's another one, world's greatest phone, and then you can have this and you're all good. Samsung even made sure that you knew you had one with a safe battery because the little battery icon will be a different color. And this is when the
Sweet.
drama really started, because then those safer replacement phones started overheating and catching fire all the same. But it even happened on an airplane. It was a replacement device, unplugged and powered off, complying with all the FAA guidelines and everything, still went up.
Would you please keep in mind that the use of Samsung Galaxy S7 Note is strictly forbidden.
And that was it. The dream was over. Samsung canned the whole thing. Like, Samsung didn't really mention
I
how
never
one of their
heard that
first
recall
batch
message.
batteries got through their quality control
That's
process.
funny.
And then, like, why the heck? I mean, it really actually did offend me to see that, like, you know, people were told, you got a nice one, you got a good one, don't you worry about, like, breathing lithium smoke in the night. So people were confidently
that.
putting it beside their bed, putting it on charge, and waking up gagging. Like, health
Or
risks
dead,
much? It
you know?
actually really did offend me. It really did. Well, apparently the other batteries they were sourcing, some cells had missing insulation tape or like sharp protrusions or something. At
The
this time,
hell?
Samsung had made 2.5 million of these terrible things, and I'm allowed to call these terrible devices now. And the recall was huge. It was epic scale. And apparently 93% of them were meant to have been returned. I remember seeing on like subreddits and things that they were just Note 7 holdouts who just didn't want to give it up. And you know, because it honestly was the best phone that ever been made. And being the first USB-C phone with really ultra-fast charging, it got them thinking about the entire ecosystem of their phone. And look, I know the Note 7 holdouts at the time would argue, oh mate, it's only a small percentage that blew up in the flames unexpectedly, even powered off. But gotta stress, it was way more than normal. You know, as I said, CNET never would see that many like devices per year catching fire, and in the first month it was over 100 of these. And don't forget that these were brand new devices. Now imagine when they've been dropped 50 times. You know, experiencing hours of like 100% humidity in your gross gym pants. Potential
Yeah.
ticking time bomb. Hey, speaking of potential ticking time bomb, here we are. This is a Galaxy
Fire.
Note 7. This is one of the few that didn't get handed back. Samsung offered a lot to get these off the streets and out of people's hands. There's no reason to own one of these anymore unless you collect freak junk like I do. Like, this lives in a metal
I
box,
do.
let me put it that way. They did release a fan edition version, probably because they just had so many of these kicking around, they had to do something with them. I think they had like way smaller batteries. And would you believe these are really hard to get? There's not many left. There's no reason to have them anymore. And I haven't tried to turn this on yet. Telcos were like bricking these via updates or something. Like there was, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
we're gonna
it's
find
true.
out
Alma collects
right
neat
here.
junk.
I hope mine hasn't been
Yeah,
bricked.
I have a lot of neat
use
junk.
it a little bit. USB-C. She's modern. Here we go.
Oh no!
Oh, dear.
He's
I
turning
can
it
see-
on.
I've got a battery on it, so it's pulling 7 watts, which is a good start. Ooh.
I'm scared.
Okay. I mean, that's what you want to see from one of these. No battery power.
It just
Does that
goes in
red
a
light mean that it's armed?
Fire.
Is it gonna go up?
Is it armed? Hey, hold up. Hold up, real quick. Don't do this. Do not do this. Don't do this. I mean, if you've seen a battery fire, you know why this is a bad idea. This is an insanely bad idea.
Oh, dangerous! Dangerous! Can we turn on, mate? Come on. Yeah! Yeah!
Fear.
Come on! Go! That's awesome! Oh, that flash screen could be worth money nowadays. Oh, Smaznog! Oh, I love the ultra-wide screen. That's neat. Oh! Emergency! Help, I've turned on my Note 7. We're doing it.
Ooh, it's stock.
We're using a Note 7. Ooh, it's unusually warm. It's unusually warm.
All right, great start. Oh wait, hey, that has a green battery.
This
Huh.
screen is epic. No wonder why people really loved it. The camera. Huh? Oh, Samsung, go away.
Look at all the
You know, working on this
ads.
device, which is like potentially destructive and dangerous, and then people are like, no, don't do it, don't get it, because it's junk, you don't need it, and I'm like, oh, but I kind of want it, and I kind of need it, because, you know, it's like, you know, it's kind of like my thing, eh? And then, like, I got it, and then, like, it turned on, and everything's seemingly okay, but, like, I'm waiting for things to go bad, and actually, this camera's actually pretty good. And like, you know, I'm in danger.
I've wiped
Yeah,
all
that's
my
a mood.
phones, like,
That
from
entire
whatever
part of
pictures
it's a
and things.
mood.
I gotta say, the amount of pop-ups getting into this is infuriating Samsung. I remember everyone just absolutely hating Samsung's skin of Android. And
Yeah.
just everyone just begging Samsung, just give it up, just give us raw Android.
It was called TouchWiz. Me and my friends I know have called it Touch Piss.
Like, just stick to hardware. Ugh, Amazon's pre-installed? That's heaps gross. It's an old smartphone.
Because it's bad.
With like a really nice screen and
It's really
like
bad.
quite a good camera. Actually, I'm just gonna unplug this. Stop charging. It's really warm.
Doo-doo.
It's warmer than I'm used to. After the event happened, most customers just stayed with Samsung. They just got another Samsung phone. And I can't help but not forget this. And it wasn't the fact that the phones blew up in the first
Stream
place.
cache again?
Apple had ones that banned to ones where you lost
No.
cell phone signal if you held it
Dang
in a
it.
funny way. Not detriment to your health, you know, people's cars didn't burn down, but it was the fact that they said, oh, don't worry, these new ones are safe. You've got the icon to say that you've got a good one, and then those ones exploded too. That's what really offended me. And I've never forgotten it. Yeah, quite an ugly skid mark on the face of Samsung, to be honest. It even came with its case. This thing's in really good nick. Uh-oh.
Oh,
Uh-oh, it's gone.
oh, it died.
Oh, yeah. It's gone. You know what? That's for the best. I like the idea of this thing being out of battery. What an epic piece of tech history. I'm so happy that I've got one. I'm glad that it's in beautiful condition and that it's turned itself off and doesn't need to catch fire. This is going into quarantine. This lives in a metal box, and I'm not even kidding. So yeah, this can hang out in quarantine for a
It's gonna
couple of
just
weeks.
stay in
in
the
case it
middle
gets
box.
funny. and and go from there. Well, it may be ancient, but with its headphone jack, it's actually slightly better than modern phones. And well, that's it. Thanks so much for watching.
He said it. He said the thing that everybody is talking about.
Videos, there are extra videos on
TikTok Galaxy Note 7 challenge. Try not to fucking die. Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Oh, actually, as a follow-up, hold on. There's a huge referees video. Note 7. My phone doesn't have a headphone jack. Yeah, there's go. Someone trying to restore the phones. Why is there 2 videos? I'm confused. Why are there 2 of them? Ow! Why are there 2 of these videos? Why are there... let's watch one. I don't remember which one was the one I was thinking
Recalled. Banned on flights. Explosive. It's the Samsung Galaxy Note 7.
What a great intro.
Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh Jeffries video. In this video, I'm going to be resurrecting the phone Samsung doesn't want you to remember, the Galaxy Note 7. Known for its widespread overheating batteries, which cause devices to violently catch fire and melt, you could say Samsung made the hottest phone of 2016.
Hey.
Released on the 19th of August 2016, this phone was very short-lived, being recalled only 14 days later due to a major battery flaw. Replacement units were given, however shortly after the replacement devices began catching fire, and the Note 7 was officially discontinued on the 11th of October 2016. As of early 2017, Samsung has recalled more than 96% of all Note 7 phones, which makes the very few left extremely rare and collectible items. I have a total of 3, a silver AT&T, black Verizon, and a black Fan Edition model. All are in need of repair, and in this video, I'm going to be working on the silver AT&T model. I received this device without a battery and back cover.
Thank goodness.
The display is also cracked, so that'll be
I too like to collect.
In terms of parts, I will be needing
live grenades,
display, back, camera lens, and a safe aftermarket battery. Parts for the Note 7 phones are hard to come by, as many websites don't allow sales of these phones or parts. I was able to find some replacements on AliExpress. In the hopes to make this a safe phone, I'm looking to install a lower capacity Note Fan Edition battery. However, all the batteries I could find were listed for the Note 7. After hours of research, I purchased 2 batteries. One which looks like the original, and one that looks like the lower capacity.
You really can get anything
However,
from
both the
AliExpress.
listings that I purchased these batteries from advertise as the original Note 7 battery with a capacity of 3,500 milliamp hours. The battery model number also matches the one on the original Note 7 phone.
What? Bad.
Which, of course, I'm trying to avoid. The only way I could tell I was getting a Fan Edition knockoff battery was actually from the review.
Seeing those spudders give me anxiety.
And at a closer inspection of these images revealed a 3,200 milliamp hour rating. So I ordered both.
Hey, wait! You need to buy some quality spudgers. You need to buy some quality spudgers, and you don't know where. How about today's sponsor, iFixit? Do you need tools to fix your stuff? Do you need official parts from Valve, Nokia, Motorola? Then you can come on down to iFixit and you can get the wonderful kits like the Minnow Driver Toolkit, or my personal favorite, the Protect Cool Kit, at amazing prices. And even if you and genuine parts for various devices, even manuals on how to replace them. I don't have a coupon code. I'm just doing this for a bit because I think it's really funny. But I like iFixit. Please sponsor me. I've probably gone, it's too much expensive to spend on spudgers from iFixit, but I probably spent more than that in the long... No, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you either buy... For me, it's like spending a lot of money for something that's high quality and that won't break is always going to be better in the long run than spending less money on stuff that will probably break. Because, you have to buy it again, and now you've messed up. If we ever can we call the quality spudgers? I guess.
batteries, and after they arrived, I could finally compare the two. You can see the different designs of the two. Both are dated in 2019,
More
which
stuff
is
in
well
Jalopy
after the
repair.
recall. And considering one doesn't even have the Samsung logo, these are clearly not original batteries.
Oh, thank
But
goodness.
what I'm more excited about is this milliamp hour rating capacity. Luckily, one of these rocked up as 3,200 milliamp hours, and the model number of the battery matches the one of the Galaxy Note Fan Edition. The other battery, also dated in 2019, boasts a 3,500 milliamp hour capacity, which are the batteries known to catch fire.
Oh no.
And has the same model number as the Galaxy Note 7.
Oh,
So
no.
I won't be using this battery in the phone.
That's the fire
So
one.
It's finally time to test.
Stolen batteries are the
Galaxy Note
scare.
7.
They are.
As it didn't
Spicy
come with the
pillows.
battery when it was
We love
shipped
spicy pillows
internationally
here.
from the United States, I had no way of knowing if this even works. So with a couple of screws, I undid the wireless charging coil and inserted the first battery. The cell just fits and has no breathing room, just like the original. And according to Instrumental.com,
Fear.
this lack of spacing was apparently one of the reasons it overheated and caught fire. So we're not going to be using that battery. But this smaller capacity battery found in the Note Fan Edition, you can see has much more wiggle room and spacing to allow ventilation. So when we
You gotta let the
install this
battery
back
jiggle in
together,
there.
we will put the safer, lower capacity battery inside. But for now, I'm going to use the more beefy of the two batteries to test out this phone. Powering
Wait,
it
there's a
up,
whole
it
spicy
booted
pillow
up
stuff, right?
just
Yes,
fine,
there
but I
is.
noticed
I
a
love
dead
looking at
spot
it. Maybe
near
we
the
could watch it
lower
one.
cracked
Look at it one day.
screen. The touch still functions, and I was able to set up the device. You can see here that it comes up with a message
Oh, yeah,
saying
this
the
is
Note
cool.
7 has been recalled and banned on flights. You'll also notice that it says the battery capacity is limited to 60%. So we'll need to take care of that later on to see if we can bump that back up to 100%.
So yeah, they like nerf
For now, the
these
phone
things
is functioning,
before.
and we can navigate into settings and general
Beforehand.
management to see this really is a Galaxy Note 7 930A or AT&T model. So now that we can see the device functions, I'm able to figure out what needs attention. We'll need to replace the display, install a safe battery and a new back. I'll also have to attempt to remove the charging limit of 60% and unlock the phone from AT&T so I can use my SIM in this phone.
Yep.
Luckily, AT&T offers a free unlock service. Unfortunately, this didn't work in
Oh,
my
that's
case,
nice.
and it was coming up as not being an AT&T device, which it clearly was. So I had to source the unlock code from a third party. While I was skeptical,
So is it actually just the battery that's the problem rather than? Well, I mean, it's a it's like a combination of both. So the problem with it is that the battery needs a little bit of space to, like, you know, breathe functionally. What I think was, or basically is that the battery can't, you know, like the message on batteries, like you shouldn't bend them, poke them, stab them, that type of thing. So because the chassis was so had tight tolerances, when the battery was installed, it bent the battery on the corners a little bit. And that was enough with the combination of normal battery, you know, charging and heat expansion and shrinkage and all that jazz, caused it to short at some point, and that's where the fires came from. So it's literally it was like it didn't have enough space to basically quote unquote breathe than what was required, and that caused problems with installation, and then it'll mess up when, you know, and everything else. That's nowadays for battery installation, a lot of the phone batteries fit into cases kind of pretty like snugly, but not like snugly that you have to push the thing in. You just kind of have to drop it in and it's fine. So that's enough space for it. Hold on, wait a minute. What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be creating a small robot arm with a knife and a box that'll stab this battery. Now we'll be throwing it into this recreation of the Demon Core I made out of parts with AliExpress to see what happens. Yeah, that sounds right. Hey, speaking of, did we talk about the Nuclear Boy Scout? Did we talk? Was there a Finding Out Friday that had the Nuclear Boy Scout? Y'all are making me think about the Nuclear Boy Scout.
Or 25 US.
I'm going to find it again.
Many days later, I received an email saying they couldn't find the code. They had to search another database, But finally, I received a code and could attempt the unlock process.
Okay, I can't find it. Yes, I feel like it was 2 years ago. Yeah, it sounds right.
7 and entered the code that was sent to me from this website. After inputting
quite
the code,
early?
it
Oh,
was
okay.
successful, and I finally had network capability. The next thing we need to do is bring this phone back into pristine condition by installing that new screen. So I'm going to need to take out the speaker assembly. I can then unscrew 2 screws holding the motherboard in place, disconnect all the cables, and finally I'll be able to lift out the motherboard.
This is still-
in piece. I need to be
I've
careful
known you
when
since
doing
late
this
2020. When
because,
did you
as
start
I said
finding a
earlier,
battery?
replacement parts
I
are
don't
hard to come
remember.
by, so I desperately
It's been a
don't
long
want to
time.
damage
I
anything
bet I could
inside
find
this
it
phone.
first time in my
With the
schedule,
motherboard
and then
removed,
we can
I can
put the
take out
date
the
there.
earpiece. I can remove the sensor cable and the vibrate motor. This is usually stuck in quite well, so once you lift it up a bit, you can stick a spudger underneath to pry that out.
Spudger.
Moving forward, we can remove the charging port assembly by unscrewing all 3 screws, taking out the modular headphone jack, and lifting the charging port out of place.
It's so
It is
nice
held
to
down
see
with
that
some
they're
lighted
all
adhesive
kind of
and some
screwed
clips,
in,
so we'll need
and
to
they're
be
not
careful
like
when
all
removing
put
that.
together.
Coming across to my new screen assembly, which includes a new frame as well, I can start by installing the charging port assembly, making sure it is aligned correctly, and then we can route it in its correct positions, reinstall the headphone jack, and the 3 screws securing the whole dock connector in place. I can install the
This meeting
vibrate
season's
motor
a shame.
and earpiece again, and the sensor cable. During this process, I noticed that the S Pen cable was very flimsy at the connector, so I was a bit skeptical on the condition of this replacement
The
screen.
pet is getting spicy.
Nevertheless, I proceeded with the repair and installed the motherboard back into place. Once we have the motherboard installed, we can test out the phone to make sure the touch and S Pen functions are working on the display.
The
Carefully
spin.
routing and placing the motherboard back into place, I
S
can
Pen.
connect up all of its relevant connectors and install a battery so we can get this phone tested.
Yeah, see now it like
Flipping
is
the device over, we
it's
can press and hold
loose,
that power
which is
button,
nice.
and thankfully we see the Galaxy Note 7 splash screen. Booting up the phone, I can go into the phone dialer and type in a special code here, which will bring up the diagnostic menu. From here, we can test out the
Spin.
S Pen functionality, and you can see that the S Pen barely works. So my predictions were right. That S Pen cable was definitely damaged. The hover function also doesn't work, so this screen is absolutely garbage.
Fail.
And I definitely don't want to be putting this screen onto such a beautiful device.
Spin.
So I had to send it back via AliExpress return and paid $20 in shipping, which I never got back.
Oh, that's
Plus, I
miserable.
purchased a replacement display from a different seller. So
Oh, that
hopefully this
sucks.
time it will work. And I left a special comment when I purchased it to make sure that they tested the S Pen functionality. I'm going to
So
go ahead
Galaxy
and do
Cable
the
S Pen.
same process as before and transfer the old parts from the old frame into the new one.
That
we can
sounds
get this
fine.
phone tested, and hopefully this time we will have a successfully working display panel and we can proceed on with
With a
the
stylus and actual pencil. Oh yeah,
I'm
that's
feeling
problem.
very confident this is going to work.
I am a person who does in fact
and
enjoy
install
like
its
pretty
5
nice
screws.
mechanical pencils and
Installing
stationary.
a battery,
Metal
we can
ones are
test
fun.
out this phone, and sure enough, this screen is working at least. But it's now time to test out S Pen functionality, and you can see already it is working much better. But opening up the diagnostic menu once again, you can see this S Pen is functioning perfectly, and this display is fully
Ooh,
functional.
what a clear.
So it's time to actually stick down that battery into place. I've installed the lower capacity 3200 milliamp hour fan edition knockoff battery, and once that's installed, I can put back on the wireless
the yellow
charging
black
coil,
ones?
install its appropriate
I think so,
screws,
yeah.
and install the new back panel, which unfortunately doesn't say Note 7 on the bottom.
Aww.
And just as a side note, this back panel would have originally had an AT&T logo on it.
It
I
looks
can remove the plastic
nice.
protective film from
I wish it was
back and
labeled.
front
I
of
wish
the
it was
Note
labeled
7
Samsung Galaxy Note
and
7 though.
install a tempered glass screen protector.
Yeah.
And we're almost done.
All right.
Now that our device is cosmetically flawless, we still have to
Now
tackle
here's the
the
neat
issue
part.
of the not charging above 60% and prevent this phone from getting any future software updates which Samsung issued that limits the charge capacity to 0, completely bricking the device. As you can see, when the device reaches 60%, it just refuses to charge. It'll still connect to a computer or a device, but the battery percentage will never increase.
Ooh.
So I'm going to downgrade my phone to a version prior to the charging limit. When downgrading a Samsung,
I am
you
free
can
from
only
your
install
label.
the
Welcome
same
back.
or
We are
newer
talking about
binary version.
Galaxy Note
To
7s.
check what binary you have, dial *#123# and check the number. For the Note 7, there are 3 versions. Version 3 is a 0% charge limit. Version 2 has 2 firmwares, the green battery update and the 60% limit, while version 1 is the stock release firmware. As I have version 2, I can revert back to the green battery update, which was issued to show users if they had an original or replacement Note 7. After quite an extensive search, I found the firmware files I was looking for my AT&T Note 7. I transferred them across to a Windows PC and extracted the files. There should be 4 of these, and there should be one that's huge in size and the others aren't very big at all. I'll need to use these to restore my phone to the older version. I'll need to boot the phone into download mode by holding the volume down, power and home buttons. I can then press the volume up to dismiss the warning, plug the device into a computer, and we're ready to go.
Funny debug mode.
The first time I restored the phone, it failed. The reason for this was I tried to go back to binary version 1, as I tried to install the original factory software that came with the device when these phones first released. As you can see here, it says Fuse 2, which means I'm on binary 2, and I was trying to downgrade to binary 1. This won't work. So, using the green battery update, which was also on binary version 2, I could restore this phone back to the older version, and it should succeed. Running it through a restore, it didn't fail this time, and after about 15 minutes
progress
or
bar at the bottom.
the phone slowly progressed through the restore process. While that whole explanation might have sounded very confusing, once you get the grasp of how this downgrading works on a Samsung, it's really not that complicated.
And it's back.
Eventually, the phone rebooted and I was able to set it up as brand new. As you can see, after leaving it on the charger, it has charged all the way to 100%.
Fear.
You'll also notice my battery icon is green, which means this is actually a replacement Galaxy Note 7. Now, to be able to connect this phone to the internet and cellular data, I'm going to install Alliance Shield X. This will block the software updates on the phone. I'll need to briefly connect to Wi-Fi to be able to log into my account, which I created on a computer. I'll need to scroll down and accept the terms and conditions of this app, and then quickly turn off Wi-Fi to prevent any software updates from installing on the phone. If an update is to install on this phone, it will enable the 0% charging limit and ultimately brick the phone, as it will update the phone to binary version 3. I'll enable Shield version 2, which doesn't
I did not know
any
about
sort
this
of
lizard
root,
handling
as well
mode.
as
Thank
Device
you.
Administrator, which gives the app all of the requirements it needs to actually stop these updates. I'll tap on the Enable Shield button and install a couple of other little pieces to the puzzle, which will stop the updates from this phone. After it's successfully installed, I'm going to reboot the phone just to double check everything is functioning after a restart. In settings, you can see tapping on the software update button does absolutely
blocking
nothing.
updates. Neat.
You'll also find the status of the Shield in the notification menu, which tells me this is not going to get any software updates. I will also occasionally get this message saying, unfortunately, software update has stopped working. And boom,
But there we go.
we're done. This Note 7
Restored
has been
back to
restored
normal.
into pristine condition, had a safer battery installed, unlocked from AT&T in the US, and the charge limit has been removed. I'm glad I was able to remove the charge limit without rooting the phone or tripping Knox. This phone functions as it would have when first released, although contactless payments such as Samsung and Google Pay won't work as they've been disabled through Samsung servers. I also purchased a Note 7 box separate, so while it's not original to this phone, it contains all the original accessories still sealed and unused. According to Wikipedia, the Note 7 was supposedly IMEI blocked in many countries, including mine. However, both of my US Note 7 phones work flawlessly on cellular networks. In fact, I used this phone for a whole week prior to repairing the screen and removing the charging lead.
Oh, sweet cheese, he used
I
it.
also got a hold of a genuine LED view cover, which I found to be quite a cool case, with its screen displaying the time, charge percentage, and even notifications.
I forgot the view covers were cool.
For those wondering how big this Note 7 recall was, the Los Angeles Times said the
They
total
were
cost of the
cool.
recall to be at least $5.3 billion. So it's fair to say this phone is a keeper. I'll be doing more videos on my Galaxy Note 7 phones, including repairing my Verizon model and Note Fan Edition. I'll also be using this phone to see how it holds up after all these years without any updates. I hope you enjoyed this blast from the past, and on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw...
I love that. Alright, let's see your next video. Let's see here. What else should I do here? Okay. This one is about... I haven't finished watching this one. This one is about the CIA. That's about what Twitter's worth? Wow, that's a lot. That's not a lot now that I think about it. Wow. Yeah. So this one is from Beastbart, which I believe was originally PBS? And it's what's the title? How the CIA secretly spied on climate change. Hey, Alma, the stream is really the bomb. Ha ha ha. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
People, Joe here. In the late 1950s, just about every geopolitical decision...
Are you guys ready to hear about the Cold War?
Would Western
again?
democracy or communism become the dominant force across the globe? Cold War tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States were getting increasingly hot. Ideological conflict threatened to spill over onto the actual battlefield, which meant the world lived under the terrifying specter of nuclear war. In the late 1950s, the US wasn't exactly winning. The Soviets had already developed their own hydrogen bomb, up to 1,000 times stronger than the atomic bombs the US dropped on Japan during World War II. And by 1956, the Soviets were flying long-range bombers that could reach the continental US. Even worse,
tension
in 1957,
is grabbed.
the
Yeah,
USSR launched
Cold War
the
time.
first intercontinental ballistic missile. The following year, the ICBM would change the world forever when it launched Sputnik 1, the world's first human-made satellite into orbit around Earth.
The Soviet launching of Earth satellites is an
Orbular.
achievement of the first importance. There is real military significance to these launchings.
This scared the crap out of the US government and the American public. I mean, after all, if the Soviets could put a satellite into orbit, then they could definitely nuke an American city. The US was terrified of falling behind in the Cold War. So US and NATO intelligence needed to know what the Soviets were up to behind the Iron Curtain. The high-altitude U-2 spy plane had proven to be a powerful intelligence gathering platform, but missions into Soviet territory had become too risky, especially after a U-2 was shot down over the USSR.
It's the balls, great granddaddy.
In a long speech, continued the campaign of denunciation that began with the shooting down of the American reconnaissance plane over Russia.
So the CIA and Air Force decided to do what no one had ever done before: put cameras in space.
Only 8 weeks.
And after the USSR collapsed, the US stopped caring about space. Yeah, that sounds right.
Proceed with a joint
And then-
CIA Air Force indirect
Yeah, that sounds right.
reconnaissance satellite.
I don't remember where the
to answer the
ISS comes into play, but you know.
Soviet missiles.
That is how a first-of-its-kind spy satellite program named Corona was born. The only reason we even
Weird
know about
timing.
this top-secret program today is because it's helping us save the world in a completely different way. Not by fighting the Red Menace, but by studying climate change. This is a story of how former enemies...
Oh, the
became
ISS was not
scientific
related to the
allies.
Soviets at all?
How science and top-secret
Oh.
spycraft work together to unlock the secrets of how our planet is changing. This is the unbelievable but totally true tale of a Cold War and a warming planet, and how satellites that prevented nuclear war helped us spy on Earth's climate. So this is one of my absolute favorite things to do on Google Earth. There's this super cool feature that lets you see how a place changes over time. It can be pretty shocking to watch a lake dry up before your eyes. I mean, you can just watch
kind of scary.
Emerge from the sea, or you can watch a glacier recede before your very eyes.
Fear.
Comparing data points from the past to data from today is a really
Shams is
powerful way
suddenly
to
paying attention to
understand
the Shams is interested in listening about the Cold War and climate change.
for granted thanks to satellite technology. As of 2023, at least 2,600 active satellites are orbiting the Earth. They give us
God, that
GPS
looks
direction,
terrifying.
help us stream our favorite shows, and they take pictures.
The satellite image is terrifying when you like scale it up just a little bit. I'm like, why?
Taking photos from space was
I'm scared.
basically science fiction. Back then, the US space program was still in its infancy. Like, not even that. It was basically embryonic.
But now we have come to a new day. NACA is to become part of a new agency, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
NASA opened in October 1958, almost 1 year after Sputnik's launch. By that time, the Soviets had already sent a dog into orbit. By every measure, the U.S. was behind.
He's wandered
in the
off.
space race.
ADHD.
And to rub salt,
ADHD lizard.
the U.S. had
I feel it.
experienced some pretty
I
catastrophic
relate to the lizard.
and public failures trying to get their own rocket into space. For example, the Vanguard rocket. It was supposed to send the U.S.'s first satellite into orbit. It exploded. Repeatedly.
Control system breaks down and Defense Department cameras record a pinwheel of fire. Another disaster for Project Vanguard.
The press even called this a flopnik. Ouch.
What a flopnik.
Instances where you may be ahead of us.
Look, there's no sugarcoating it. The US was getting totally embarrassed in the space race. So they did what governments do when they're struggling.
Sabotage?
Full hype mode.
Oh, that too.
Talking up the US's currently non-existent, but definitely coming any day now, space capabilities.
Exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. And it is one of the great adventures of all time. And no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space.
Hey, it's that guy from Clone High.
Calls for new frontiers, new visions.
When Dr. Robotnik's and Sue Boss Machine falls flat.
Now that will make us no longer second in space and in science.
And to turn these hopes and dreams into reality, the US government started pumping piles of money into US space programs.
One of the great adventures
like
of all abandoned
this
less
one,
than 10 years.
Codenamed
Sheesh.
Corona, the first spy satellite. Now, Corona was the definition of a moonshot program.
Space.
Or, I guess the US hadn't actually put anything into space yet, so more of an orbit shot program. Setting aside the tiny problem that the US could barely launch satellites without blowing them up, Corona project scientists also had to figure out how to make a camera work in space.
In my Flopnik era.
High-altitude spy cameras are usually panoramic cameras. They work by swinging side to side to take a larger, high-resolution image. But every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So in zero-G, scientists had to figure out some way to counterbalance this rotating camera so that it wouldn't also rotate the satellite straight out of orbit. And of course, this is before digital photography. Kodak had to develop an entirely new polyester film that wouldn't disintegrate in space. And they had to figure out how to get that film back to Earth. Couldn't just let it fall wherever Farmer Joe or Farmer Yuri could find it, right?
Oh no.
So obviously, they'd catch it out of midair with planes. When a film container was used, the Corona satellite would shoot it back to Earth.
Okay.
A parachute would deploy, and then the film would get snagged by a plane using essentially a giant fishing hook.
What the
Shockingly, this actually worked. In 1960, the US became the first to recover an object that had come back from orbit.
Yo!
Beating the Soviets to that accomplishment by 5 days.
Explain she didn't play.
Win's a win.
I never played Call of
This
Duty.
is being done in complete
I don't like Call of
secrecy from
Duty.
the public. The US government invented this whole cover story for these spy satellite rocket launches, saying that Corona was actually a harmless scientific research program named Discoverer. That these capsules returning to Earth contained biological samples, early tests for eventually sending humans to space.
A Thorible satellite vehicle soars aloft, sister ship and precursor of the rocket that will carry into orbit the first Earth-born life intended to return alive. The passengers of Discoverer 3rd, 4 black mice.
But the real mission was getting cameras into space to spy on the Soviet Union. Despite dozens of failed launches, and the time that one of the top secret film canisters was found by some farmers in Venezuela, the Corona spy satellite program worked. It was wildly successful in the eyes of the intelligence agencies.
By the mid-1960s, we knew with great confidence the exact number of weapons of all types that were deployed in the Soviet Union.
All in all, during Corona, the U.S. recovered 167
biological
canisters with photos covering 500 million.
You know, ignoring the fact that
nautical
Corona
miles of Earth's
also means like
Corona helped the U.S. eventually take the lead in the space race. But after the last Corona satellite launched on May 25th, 1972, the program became a footnote in the history books, a classified one. But fast forward to the 1990s, and something big was about to happen.
Speaking of
it would change Corona's story forever.
Remind me after this video, I have another video to show you guys.
Been removed from power, and there
Just
are
say the word
now
Corona and 5G, and I'll remember.
The red flag flying over the Kremlin has been lowered for good.
As President Gorbachev resigned and brought to an end 7 decades of communist rule in the Soviet Union.
In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. And suddenly, the Cold War was just over. The US spy satellite fleet and all the images they'd taken, they were kind of out of a job. So this young senator from Tennessee wrote a letter to the CIA asking if US spy satellites could do some side work, looking at environmental change.
And that is why, when I was still serving in the Senate, that I began
hi, Mr. Gore.
with Bob Gates to explore how these assets could be applied to the task of improving our understanding of the Earth's environment.
Yep. That senator was Al Gore.
This activity really
because of
had
course
its
it's going to be
origins
Al Gore
back in the late 1980s, I think, when then Senator Gore, who was obviously very much interested in climate issues, wrote a letter, and Senator Gore to head of the CIA. He asked the question, is it possible that there might be a way in which we could in fact have studies that would use classified information that would provide scientists with better understanding of the environment?
Gore knew that this satellite imagery would be a goldmine for civilian environmental scientists.
Yay.
After all, while Corona satellites were spying on the Soviet Union, they were also taking photos of areas where climate change hits the hardest.
I haven't heard of this, McElroy brother.
Just one small problem. All of those photos were top secret.
The secret fourth McElroy.
That would go no further than just a letter from Gore to the CIA, and then they would be turned down. And so Bob Gates, who was the CIA director at that point, had an interest in looking at new ways to do things. Gore wrote to Gates, and Gates responded, and we set up the Environmental Task Force.
So in October 1992, the CIA put Dr. Linda Zoll, a satellite imagery expert, in charge of figuring out if the government might actually be able to share these old spy photos.
Linda was absolutely critical to the process because she was an expert analyst on the one hand, but she really believed that it's important for the CIA to use its assets to monitor the environment. She is what people would say a force of nature.
Dr. Zoll had to figure out what images the government had and how much could be safely shared. She couldn't just hand over tons of national security secrets to a bunch of nerds.
They weren't going to give us the real high resolution stuff, so they had to degrade it. They have very, very sharp images. Let's say they can resolve better than a license plate.
Oh, that's pretty good.
What they wanted to release was something like a 1 meter resolution. So it's, it's fuzzy up to that resolution.
Once these images were safe for non-spy eyes, Zoll recruited scientists to create an environmental task force that would review classified satellite data and images to study Earth science and climate.
This sounds great. I wonder where it is now.
The signing
I'm a little
of an executive
worried.
Order declassifying imagery from our early intelligence satellite systems.
I hope they're
The
still
release
here.
of this imagery will mark the first declassification of classified satellite imagery ever.
Thanks to this senator from Tennessee, who was now vice president, the government took hundreds of thousands of formerly classified images from the Corona satellites and turned them over to this carefully chosen team of scientists who started digging into the Corona archives.
There's 1,000 times as much information about the Earth's processes and the environment collected in that effort as there is in
This sort of thing, yeah.
the programs that are specifically dedicated to collecting
This is neat,
information
though.
about the environment. And so it obviously makes sense to figure out ways to make use of it without compromising our national security.
It was called the Medea Program. Basically, this was the Justice League of environmental scientists.
There were oceanographers, geologists, energy experts, meteorologists, climate experts, all for now beginning to talk to each other and forming new ideas about things that you could do.
I mean, a totally improbable team. Scientists and spies analyzing photos that weren't even supposed to exist. And this data painted a picture that scientists had never seen before. To figure out how the environment has changed.
Yeah, shows what you can do when you
today
actually do like good things.
And suddenly,
Which is
scientists have been given a literal time capsule. Hundreds of thousands of pictures of what the Earth looked like all the way back into the 50s and 60s. It expanded our window into the past so we could better understand how changes to the environment were speeding up. Medea helped scientists discover all kinds of things, that the Arctic Sea became saltier as sea ice melted. Corona photos proved that the Aral Sea had shrunk by 50% in 50 years. And Medea scientists also recruited a very unlikely ally, Russia. Russia had been sending submarines under Arctic ice for decades, so they knew just how thick the ice was at any given time. And that mattered for climate research.
And so the spy agency started talking to each other. Got a submarine going underneath the ice, it can look upwards, and it can tell you what the thickness of the ice is, because you can't do that from looking from above.
But cooperation with the Russians...
All right, here's the interesting part.
A bit tricky.
The funky part.
I had a scientist who was working for me at NOAA who had earlier gone to the Arctic and collected some Russian data, but then when he was leaving, the KGB stopped him and confiscated his laptop. And so I asked Al Gore, how can we arrange this, since you're talking to Chernomyrdin, who's the vice premier? And he said, well, at one point, I'll make sure that I'm talking to Chernomyrdin in a quiet spot. You come up and interrupt me and say, oh, we've got this problem with a laptop. Is there something you can do? And he said, I'm sure the Russians will say, oh, we can fix that. I saw Gore. He kind of maneuvered Chernomyrdin over, and I walked over quickly. And I said that, and Chernomyrdin said, oh, yeah, we can do that. No problem. He waved an aide over to do it. And we got the laptop back. So we got a lot of data from the Russians.
Wow.
80% of the Arctic Ocean data at that point had been collected by the Russians. Ooh. And they were willing to put that into a common database.
These spy images, this team of top secret scientists recruited by the CIA, changed the way we understand the planet. Like, just for the ocean, declassified corona imagery doubled the information in our existing databases. And thanks to the Russian data exchange, we learned that the average ice thickness in the Arctic declined by almost half in 28 years. The Medea program continued until it was shut down in 2001.
Oh.
It was briefly revived under President Barack Obama in 2010,
Yay!
before closing its doors once and for all in 2015. But even though Medea isn't around today, the program and Corona's declassified images continue to be used by scientists to increase our understanding of the world. Images taken by Corona and provided by the Medea Project have helped epidemiologists track cholera outbreaks. Ooh. Archaeologists understand ancient civilizations. And even political scientists understand how satellite surveillance influences how we act. And this cooperation between the intelligence community and civilian scientists has
that last one got me scared. What?
Global Fiducials program, where the CIA uses classified technology to provide important data for Earth scientists today. We always hear this reminder that we have to work together to tackle climate change. And this is one of the craziest stories of people you'd never expect to come together. Spies and scientists, East and West, cooperating for the most important mission of all, saving the planet.
There's a tendency for the science to be siloed. I think that we need to have a broader perspective on what the problems are and how we're going to deal with them.
This is one of the wildest chapters in the history of science that I've ever learned about. And it shows us the incredible things that are possible when unexpected ideas come together, thanks to the work of a handful of passionate people. These satellites that were originally designed to help prevent a nuclear apocalypse.
Hey, Nell, you're probably right, and I'm concerned about that
fact. Help us avert a totally different sort of crisis, climate change and environmental loss. These men and women in black and men and women in science came to...
Speaking of, happy 5th anniversary of loss, everybody.
Together to spy on planet Earth. Because all of those...
I need to get that out of my head.
International politics and military might, well, none of that stuff really matters without the planet itself. Stay curious. This was an incredible story.
Knowledge video, good.
And as you can imagine, this was not an easy story to put together. I want to thank everyone who supports this show on Patreon, because you help make episodes like this one
only
possible.
5 years? Yeah, it's been 5 years since he published that.
Of research, digging into archives, finding images, interviewing people
just
who are
5
in projects like this is a lot of work.
You know, just
thanks to the support of our patrons, we're able to create videos like this. We're able to tell these stories in the...
Oh, maybe before we should go, I should show you... Oh, not 15th? Oh, I'm scared. What? Oh my god, it's been 15 years? What? That's even worse. Alright. We're going from that to funny food video because I'm going to watch Max Miller talk about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 20 minutes, and no one could stop me, because this was actually kind of really neat. It's really neat. Peanut butter and jelly.
Well-known fact that the most perfect sandwich ever conceived by a human being is the peanut butter.
Also pointing out thematically appropriate Pokemon with giraffe rig over there. You always gotta say that.
But was it always so perfect? Well, I'm going to find out as I make the very first recipe for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from 1901. So thank you to Wondering for sponsoring this video as I investigate the origins of the PB&J. This time on Tasting History. So I suspect that this video is going to get rather different reactions in different parts of the world, because while here in the US making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is practically a national pastime, in parts of the world they are almost unheard of. In many countries,
Rose, you are very
base-oriented. Is hard to come by, and there are those who believe that the peanut butter and jelly sandwich is an abomination, and for those people, I weep.
How dare they?
I can lead them into the light with this first recipe from the Boston Cooking School magazine in 1901. For variety, someday try making little sandwiches or bread fingers of 3 very thin layers of bread and 2 of filling, 1 of peanut paste, whichever brand you prefer, and currant or crabapple jelly for the other. The combination is delicious and, so far as I know, original. So
far as I know.
Brilliant. Original. It being so simple, it means that there's not a lot to actually make, but I am going to show you how to make the bread that was most commonly used for sandwiches at the turn of the century, the Pullman loaf. But I won't be making the jelly or peanut butter from scratch, because both currants and crab apples are pretty hard to come by where I am living, and for the peanut butter, during this time period, you just run peanuts through the coffee grinder or a meat grinder, and I tried to run some peanuts through my hand-crank coffee grinder, and I'm pretty sure that I destroyed the coffee grinder forever. Aww. Luckily, the Whole Foods near me lets you freshly grind peanut butter only using peanuts as the period recipes call for. Its gritty texture evokes peanut butters of the past, back when they were still called goobers. And I actually recently found out why peanuts were once called goobers while I was watching a course from today's sponsor, Wondrium. The series is called Food, A Cultural Culinary History, and it's presented
I also
by
didn't know goober was in reference to a peanut,
and it's actually the course that I back then listened to when I first
started
getting
new to me. I did not know
history. All of the courses on Wondrium are taught by experts in their field, and there is no one more expert in the field of culinary history than Ken Albala. He leads you through the entire history of food, all the way from
Is Alma a goober? No, I am not a goober.
As big business today. And in one of the later episodes, he
I am a good egg. I am not a goober.
Peanuts and how they originated in South America, but then made their way to West Africa.
Well, I'm not made of peanut butter.
They were called ginguba. These then made their way to North America during the Atlantic slave trade. Hold up.
What? What was it called again?
They originated in South America, but then made their way to West Africa, where they were called ginguba. These then made their
ginguba.
way to North America during the Atlantic slave trade, and the ginguba just became gooba or goober.
My favorite VTuber, Gargooba. Have you seen the Slender theory where Goofy Goobers are actually like an alien worship cult? What?
Every course on Wondrium is packed full of interesting tidbits like
They're
that,
what?
Whether they be covering history or travel, culture, architecture, business, or literature. So if you want to start learning today, then sign up for a free trial of Wondrium at wondrium.com/tastinghistory, or just visit the link in the description. A free trial of Wondrium when you use that link. Now, with the peanut butter and jelly accounted for, let's tackle that Pullman loaf.
Bread.
I'm going to use a recipe from Baker's Bread by Paul Richards, written in 1906. And for that, what you'll need is 1 2/3 cup or 400 milliliters of water, 2 teaspoons of dried yeast, 6 tablespoons or 85 grams of lard or butter, 3 tablespoons or 35 grams
One of these
sugar,
days, I should probably learn how to make my own bread.
Of bread flour.
It seems very kind of fun.
A teaspoon of salt. So first add the yeast and sugar to the water and give it a few minutes to bloom, and then add in the flour, the salt, and the lard or butter, and start to work the ingredients together until they become a rough dough. Then set it out onto a lightly floured surface and start kneading it until you have a smooth, soft dough. It's a rather sticky dough, so you may need to add more flour, but don't add any more than you need to. I promise it'll start to firm up as you knead it. After about 15 minutes of hand kneading or 5 to 7 minutes in a machine, set the dough into a lightly greased bowl and cover with a wet towel. Let it rise until it's nice and fluffy, about an hour and a half, and while it rises, you can pull out your Pullman loaf pan. That is this, and this is really what makes a Pullman a Pullman. Other names for the bread are pain de mie, pain anglais, or just sandwich bread, but Pullman is the most common that
English bread
was around at the time, and still today, I think, when you see this, it's usually called a Pullman tin. It's said that the bread
because bread smells
from
good.
Pullman train cars where it was served. Pullman train cars were super luxurious train cars at the end of the 19th and early 20th century. And I'm sure that's true, but I like to think that it's because the tin kind of looks like a train car. But really, the Pullman loaf is special because when it's baked in here with the lid on, it has very little crust. And so it's pretty much perfectly square and has very little crust, so it's perfect for tea sandwiches, which were little sandwiches that they would cut the crusts off of anyway. So really, this is like the original Uncrustables, but you don't have to freeze them. So butter the inside of your Pullman loaf pan.
I didn't know they froze Uncrustables.
Long, but they do make them smaller. If you do
I thought those were
use a
just kind of
size,
fine.
You'll just have to reduce the amount of dough that ends up going in the loaf pan. Once buttered, knock the air out of your risen dough and turn it out onto the counter and stretch it into a large rectangle just slightly wider than your pan. Then roll it up into a log and press the seam together. Then tuck each end into itself, folding it over onto the seam. And then press the dough together. Then set the dough seam side down into the pan, tucking it nicely into the corners, and then cover with clear plastic wrap and let the dough rise again.
Good night, bread
you want
loaf.
to let it rise until it comes up almost to the very top of the loaf pan. It's going to depend on the temperature and everything, but about an hour should get it there. Then remove the plastic wrap and slide the lid of the pan over the dough. Then set it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175
Oh dear
Celsius
God, you
for
slide it
20
over?
minutes, and then take it out, remove the lid, and return it to the oven for another 10 to 20 minutes just to let the top brown ever
I got
so
scared.
slightly.
I'm like,
You
what?
just want this bread done, and
Dude,
you can
this
tell
dude
when
has
it's
solar
done by
hands.
inserting a
Yeah.
thermometer that registers 190 degrees.
His hands are...
As soon as it's done, take it out of the oven and turn it out onto a wire rack to let it cool.
It looks so...
You cannot cut this bread when it is hot, so just be patient, make sure you're subscribed to Tasting History,
It looks so
and listen
square.
to me tell you about the origins of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
History.
So the story
Yay.
of PB&J is really the story of 3 ingredients: peanut butter, jelly, and sliced bread. And of those 3, the peanut butter definitely has the most interesting origins. Peanuts were grown throughout the Incan Empire in South America. And in the early 16th century, when a Spanish soldier and poet, Garcilaso de la Vega, encountered both the Incas and the peanuts, which at the time were called inchic, he was decidedly mixed on the legume, saying, "If eaten raw, it causes headaches. But if roasted, it is tasty and beneficial. With honey, they make a very good marzipan from it." So at least as far back as 1500, peanuts were being ground up and mixed with honey. Not exactly peanut butter, but getting
Peanuts
close,
and
it sounds
honey.
delicious.
Huh.
So much so that the Spanish and Portuguese made sure to bring peanuts back to Europe and to Northwest Africa. And it was in Africa that they became a feature of many dishes, and so it's no surprise that they followed the Atlantic slave trade back to the West, arriving to North America with enslaved Africans in the 1700s. Now, was it still being ground into a paste? Maybe, we don't know, because like so much of history, it wasn't exactly written down, and so it's kind of lost. We don't have any more written records of peanuts being ground into a paste until the late 19th century. Now, George Washington Carver is often cited as the inventor of peanut butter, but of the 300 prescribed uses he gave for the peanut butter was not one of them.
What were the
Credit
other
actually
uses?
goes to a Canadian, Marcellus Edson, who in 1884 patented a machine specifically used to grind up peanuts. But it was an American, John Harvey Kellogg of Kellogg's Corn Flakes, who popularized the food. Now, Kellogg had some rather unorthodox views on food.
Oh, here we go.
just on him. But one of
Kellogg
his ideas was he was a vegetarian and promoted vegetarianism, which isn't weird in and of itself, but his reasoning that meat was a sexual stimulant is a little different. And so he had other foods take the place of meat, including peanuts. But he found that when swallowed in small bits, they are practically indigestible. Experiments made by the German government show that even very small particles of nuts pass through the alimentary canal entirely unchanged. The mastication of the nut should be so thorough that it will be converted into a creamy pulp before it is swallowed.
I like how he's like, dang, I swallowed these damn things whole and they didn't digest well. Chew your food. What is wrong with this guy? Meat will make you. Isn't Kellogg? Oh wait, no. I'm not thinking of Kellogg. I'm thinking of Graham. I'm thinking of Graham, who made graham crackers. Are they like? Do they share like the same beliefs? Because it was like Graham had one where it was like seasoning or something like that. Too much of it was like bad for you. And then Kellogg has this. Peanuts do kind of smush up on their own to an extent. I mean, yeah, of course, but this idiot was swallowing them in wholes. He wasn't chewing his food. Didn't his mom teach him any better? Maybe he was just following what the bird was doing and just like biting them in two and then swallowing. How does this man enjoy food? If he does. At all.
Converted into a creamy pulp before it is swallowed. I'm sorry, but for a man who is obsessed with people not having sex, his writing is rather suggestive, don't you think? Anyway, people sort of found it difficult to make sure that they were crushing the nuts with their teeth to the point of digestibility, as he said. So he says the difficulty is overcome by converting the nut into a paste, or so-called nut butter, by crushing or grinding in a suitable mill. A suitable mill that he patented.
There's the word.
Soon after, this peanut butter was being spread onto
There's the word, nut butter.
In 1896, the Washington Post raved, "Have you eaten the very latest dish? I say latest in every sense of the word, for it's a dish that goes with the midnight Welsh rarebit and is the newest and best sort of a sandwich. You take fresh bread and perfect butter. Then you have some fresh roasted peanuts. It's the fad to roast them yourself."
This sounds like a COVID line. It's such a fad. It's a fad to roast them yourself instead of buying store-bought. Spend hundreds of dollars on nut roasting equipment, and you only use it once. Like,
ground fine in a coffee mill. Next, you mix the ground nuts into a paste with a little sherry or old port. Spread them on the bread, and there you have the sandwich everybody is eating. A peanut sandwich you must have if you are to follow the fashion set, they say, by the wife of a cabinet member. So no jelly yet, but it did include sherry or port, and that makes me lament the dearth of alcoholic sandwiches on menus today. Maybe I'll add a little gin next time I make tuna salad. Probably not. But as it was, the peanut butter and wine
tempted to try that and see what it tastes like.
Because it was overshadowed by the flavor combination of peanuts and less fermented fruit. That same year, 1896, Fanny Farmer suggested a sandwich made with a fig spread and chopped peanuts inside. Ooh. Not peanut butter, but it's no surprise that just 5 years later, in the magazine from the school that she ran, they finally came out with the first recipe for peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which is the one that we're making today. But even though there was a recipe for it, it turns out the sandwich just didn't really take off. First, the peanut butter at the time was very gritty. It wasn't smooth or even chunky, just gritty, kind of like almond butter is often served today. And I guess crabapple and currant jelly just didn't entice. Then there is the added effort of having to slice your own bread. Exhausting. But there were solutions to all three of these issues coming very soon. First, the bread. It was Otto Frederick Roeder of Davenport, Iowa, who first realized that slicing your own bread was for chumps. So, After a few failed starts, including a fire which destroyed his prototype in 1912, he finally introduced a fully working bread slicing machine in 1928. A few companies started using it, but many of them thought that it was kind of a gimmick and frankly not that smart because once you slice the bread, it goes stale rather quickly, so why would anyone want that? But it turns out that pre-sliced bread is consumed a lot faster than unsliced bread, as are the things that go on it like jam and jelly, and so they sold a lot more bread and jam and jelly and the thing took off. It was soon touted as the greatest forward step in the baking industry since bread was wrapped.
And the funniest part to me is that
the greatest forward step in the baking industry since
we found the phrase that predates the best thing since sliced bread. It's the best thing since wrapped bread. Progress is measured in bread, apparently. Technological process is measured in bread.
Bread was wrapped. It was considered so fantastic that even today we still use the phrase, it's the best thing since sliced bread. So who knew that slicing your own bread was what was holding back humanity all those centuries? Now, when it comes to the jam or jelly portion of the sandwich,
imagine if the fire didn't happen, we'd be in a utopia right now.
With very little change in how it was done. But during World War I, the Welch Grape Juice Company, famous for what they touted as the national drink, that is juice, which had become popular in a country increasingly obsessed with the temperance movement, note that Prohibition was going to start just a couple years later, they released a new product called Grape-A-Lade. This, they said, was neither jam nor jelly, but jam in jelly form. And it's basically grape jelly. And at first, it was only available to the troops who were fighting over in Europe. But as they came back, they did so with Grape-A-Lade. There was actually a Grape-A-Lade ad that said, "Thank the armistice for Welch's Grape-A-Lade." Yes, be glad that the death and destruction from the Great War is finally over, but you also get Grape-A-Lade. And this was soon followed by Peach-Lade, Plum-Lade, and Fruit-Lade, which was...
I also just realized that Grape-A-Lade is grape plus marmalade. That's why it's called that. Also, what are these other fruit spreads? Grape-A-Lade, Fruit-A-Lade, which is grape and raspberry, Peach-A-Lade. These names are terrible. Strawberry-A-Lade, Blackberry-A-Lade, Cherry-Lade, 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 Plumade, Grape-A-Lade, yeah, it's not even Curralade, it's Current-A-Lade. Jeez. All Welch quality. Ask for them at your grocer's, spelt with what appears to be one C and not two.
It was a mix of grape and raspberry. World War I also helped promote peanut butter as well because there was a shortage of meat. And so just as John Harvey Kellogg had touted all of those years, they replaced the protein with peanuts here on the home front. Then in 1921, Californian Joseph Rosefield applied the process of partial hydrogenation to peanut butter. This allowed it to stay blended at room temperature and not separate into the oils and the solids. Still today, the scourge of Laura Scudder's fans everywhere. The process was first used by Derby Peter Pan peanut butter, who could now churn the peanut butter into a smooth consistency rather than the gritty consistency that comes from peanuts out of a meat grinder.
So that's where
then in 1932, Rosefield founded his own
You can't just eat Olade to everything, bro. Come on,
and developed my favorite style of peanut butter,
Coconut-A-Lade.
But it was the smooth peanut butter that was really popular and became the beloved food for school children in recipes like the peanut butter and tomato soup that I made when recreating the Depression-era school lunch.
It looks like curry. It also looks better than what school lunches were when I was there. Okay, so in the background, I started reading about nuts and legumes, and now I really want to eat some chickpeas. Oh, now I want some hummus. Oh, I want some hummus now. Shoot.
But its pairing with jelly still hadn't taken off in the school system and wouldn't for a few years. First, peanuts had to go to war.
Love that advertisement, by the way.
And wouldn't for a few years.
Like, look at this.
First, Peanut.
Mr. Peanut. Mr. Peanut goes to war. Every time you make fun of them, you're making fun of a war veteran. Like it's even from a thing for. It says down here, United States Department of Agriculture, and then I think the little circle around it says war brands, not war bonds. So yeah, Mr. Peanut is a veteran of, I think, is this World War II? Yeah, Mr. Peanut is a veteran of World War II.
Peanuts had to go to war. Peanut butter became a common item in the mess kits of American soldiers during World War II. Another common item in the mess kits was Welch's Grapelade, and so it was amongst the soldiers that they took that peanut butter and the Grapelade and put them together between 2 slices of bread. Ooh. It wasn't the first time, but that's when it really became popular. And so when they got home, they still had that craving. A craving that I know all too well. That's because, just like flat feet or a receding hairline, they passed it down to their kids.
Mr. Peanut still has his bayonet somewhere in his closet.
Sandwiches became the de facto food for children when mom either didn't want to cook or when the kids had to fend for themselves. And the peanut butter and jelly companies made sure the sandwiches found their way into every school cafeteria in the country.
Yay!
In fact, when I was a kid, if you forgot your lunch or just didn't have a lunch at school for some reason, then they would give you a peanut butter and grape jelly sandwich between 2 slices of white bread that was slightly smushed and kept at a temperature just above freezing, so it was really, really firm. And I miss that sandwich so much. I have been chasing that sandwich for 30 years and still haven't really found it. But maybe this recipe from 1901 will get me one step closer. So once your bread is cooled, slice it into rather thin slices. You need 3 slices per sandwich.
Also, look at the no crust on this. That's kind of like pretty good. I wish this. Mr. Peanut is a homunculus created by alchemists in the 17th. No, there's no forbidden alchemy for Mr. Peanut. I don't think so, at least. He grew from a sprout like everybody else.
Spread peanut butter on one, then jelly on another, and then stack those on top of each other and top with 1 more slice. And then cut that into finger sandwiches, and you're all set. And here we are, the first PB&J.
So, you know, the interesting part about this is that this recipe from 1901 straight up indicates that, straight up resolves the peanut butter on jelly friction. Like, you know, like when you make with the 2 slices of bread, like if you like put too much jelly and you bite into it, it just like squirts out the bottom or whatever. Because it just like slides out because of the peanut butter. They resolve that with the 3 slices of bread. We've been doing it wrong this entire time. It's 3 slices of bread, not 2.
So I made 2 here. I have the one with the currant jam as well as the crabapple jam. And I'm super curious about the crabapple jam because usually crab apples are like really, really tart. So I'm going to start with that.
Munch. Fancy finger sandwiches. I want to make the uncrust bread now. It seems really nice.
So first things first, she says to serve these with tea. No, they need to be served with milk. They're just too, you know, it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You need something to wash it down with. Also, while I love the idea of the triple layer, I think that just 2 pieces of bread is better. Unless this was toasted, which is actually usually how I like to do it. I like to do crunchy peanut butter, grape or strawberry jam, and toasted sourdough. The toasting just lets it not be so gooey. But the jelly, that crabapple jelly,
I will disagree with him about that, though. I like the 3
because the only ingredients are crabapple and sugar and a little pectin. So it is pretty sweet, but you still get a little bit of that tartness that you might get from like a raspberry or something like that. Let's go with the currant jam.
The currant probably is the winner.
So I do prefer
currants
that,
are good.
It's sweeter, and the flavor of that jam just stands up better to the peanut butter, which, even though it's just ground up peanuts, has a really strong flavor here. I find it has a stronger flavor than if you were to get like Skippy or something like that. It's just peanuts in your face. But yeah, so I prefer this one over this one. Both very good. Both I would actually take out that second piece of bread. But as for the bread, it's so soft.
Sourdough is good.
It's close textured because it's kept with the lid on, and that's the point. It's meant for sandwiches. There are no holes for things to really fall into. Perfect. Yeah, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Still one of, if not my favorite foods. I know it's so simple, but there's just something about it. Brings up memories. I don't know. So next week I'm going to be in New York City doing a book signing of the Tasting History Cookbook. So if you already have one or you need to get one, come on down to Kitchen Arts and Letters on Tuesday, the 30th at 5 o'clock p.m. And I'd love to meet you. I'll put the details down in the description, and I will see you next time on Tasting History.
Yay! All right. I think this is going to be the last one for today. Let me double check which one would be good for the last one for today. Oh, I'll choose this one. Okay. It's going to be the last one for today, unfortunately. I'm not American, so I don't think I've ever had PB&J. Yeah, no, it's like, you know, it's one of those, like, it's the American classic type things. Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah, that is, okay, 2 videos. Two last videos. Let me just get my video thing really quickly. Oh shoot, what was it called? Really quickly, have I shown you this video? I feel like I have. It's 4:30. Why are you awake at 4:30? Okay, I mean, I also have, so. These are bad. These are dangerous and scary. And they're wild. Okay, last one. This one's going to be, okay, last two, I promise. This one is going to be about the dark, quote-unquote, the dark underworld of F1 sponsorships. This one's from Donut Media, and I've been watching a lot of car videos because my family got a new vehicle, and I've been assigned the one to learn about vehicle. And, yeah, now I'm here. So, F1 cars. I know nothing about them, but I know that they go fast and cost a lot of money. So let's see how that goes.
Looking forward to the 2020 Formula One season, but since that got postponed for some reason, I started watching old races and realized something. A lot of these companies sponsoring these cars don't exist anymore. Shady money has been a part of Formula One's DNA for a long time, and with 490 million people watching, there's no question why shady companies would want to get their name on the side of a race car. What the heck do these companies do? Are they real? And where do they get their money? In this episode, we're going to look at some of the sketchiest, literally unbelievable companies that have a stake in Formula One racing. And don't worry, there is a Nigerian prince involved with one. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
A Nigerian prince scam.
Hey guys, one more thing. We have a new sticker pack available for pre-order. It is the sticker pack available on donut.media. It's available for pre-order. 5 stickers, and it's Mo Power Baby in sticker form. I'll just show you. There you go. Those are the stickers. You got Mo Power Baby on board. That's probably my
this is too
favorite.
Interesting for me to sleep.
One, a black one.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Cool. And then this looks kind of like the Moroso font.
We're learning.
It's pretty awesome. Mo Power sticker pack, $12, 5 stickers. Pretty awesome. More fun than you could ever imagine. The Mo Power sticker pack on the Donut Store. Go check it out. The cost of racing is insane. Formula One teams require hundreds of millions of dollars in order to compete every season.
Yeah.
The amount of funding a team can secure directly correlates to how much a team wins. That's just how F1 works. It's the way most sports work, frankly. More money, better engines, better drivers, Papa John's. Jeff Baseball. The governing body of F1, the FIA, or Fédération Internationale des Automotives, very stringently regulates car technology to maintain as much of an even playing field on the track as possible. But they historically haven't done much to balance the money side out. Kind of like how small market teams in America don't get as big a budget as the big market.
This is turning into a FIFA problem or something.
Or the Lakers versus the Kings. Formula One will have a budget cap for the first time starting in 2021, but historically speaking, there's always been a big gap in the budgets between the highest earning running teams and the lowest. Case in point, Mercedes Petronas spent the most in 2019 with $484 million, which
Did
is
you
almost
ride in a
3 times
Totino's
as much
F1
as
car,
the
though?
Williams team spent in the same time frame.
Oh
this
my.
was less than their previous year's budget of $150 million because Williams lost their title sponsor, Martini and Rossi, a company that produces vermouth, a sweet liquor made from wine. Side note, their stuff is actually pretty cheap. I thought for sure that a company sponsoring an F1 team would have some really luxurious stuff, but it's like $8.50 a bottle. Anyway,
I also didn't realize Martini was a
has to
brand.
compete with Mercedes,
I keep forgetting
that they're working with $350 million less than Mercedes. Suffice to say, a sponsor dropping out can cripple or even doom teams, which is why sometimes F1 teams end up with less than reputable backers. One recent example that Formula One fans will remember is the Rich Energy fiasco from last year. The only American-owned team in Formula One right now is Haas, and they fell victim to the shadiest sponsorship situation of 2019. Rich Energy, a slick new energy drink with antlers for a logo, became the title sponsor of the Haas team. It turned out that another F1 team, the Force India team, dismissed Rich Energy for lacking substance before they went with Canadian billionaire Lawrence Stroll's money. Then Williams was actually about to ink a deal with Rich Energy, but they didn't show up. Supposedly, Williams Story, Rich Energy's CEO and roadie for Imagine Dragons,
that's such a look
with Williams, but never made it to said meeting. Then a few days passed, and the news comes out that he signed with Haas. That should have been a red flag for Haas.
Oh, what a jerk.
There was actually a third red flag, the fact that there was no product. At a certain point in the 2019 season, people on F1 forums and Reddit realized that they had never seen a can of Rich Energy in real life.
Rolling up to the club in my Theranos branded F1.
Confused everybody when he told Motorsport.com that when people say that Rich Energy doesn't exist, that's like, quote, saying men never walked on the moon or that Elvis is still alive.
Why?
Dude, there are easier ways of telling people that you have a product and your company is a real company, okay? There just are. Then someone dug up financial statements from the company that showed their bank account had 581 British pounds or $770 total. Maybe
I have that much money in my bank account. Actually, no, I have more of that in my savings account.
Story went rogue and tweeted out, quote, "Today, Rich Energy terminated our contract with Haas F1 for poor performance. I guess you can't get fired if you quit." This was news not only to Haas, but everyone at Rich
It's
Energy.
news to
tried to force Story out of the company, calling his actions the result of a, quote, rogue individual. It was the whole thing. Rich Energy never
what
the deal, probably because they had $700 in their account, and Haas got screwed in the end, having to finish out the season with one less sponsor. Rich Energy was then taken to court over their antler logo when they were forced to pay White Bikes $30,000 in damage, which they never got.
Oh, wow.
Story was eventually pushed out of the company, and they rebranded as Lightning Volt. But this actually wasn't the first energy drink debacle in Formula One. In the 1999 season, a mysterious prince from Nigeria and a fake energy drink led to an F1 team going bankrupt.
Mysterious Nigerian prince.
The 53rd
Let's go.
season of Formula One started in 1999. Mika Hakkinen was defending his world championship title with the McLaren team, Michael Schumacher was recovering from a broken leg, and the Arrows team was trying to figure out their finances. Enter Prince Malik Adu Ibrahim. Prince Malik offered the Arrows $125 million to be a sponsor. For a team that was as strapped for cash as Arrows, $125 mil could completely turn their luck around. So team manager Tom Walkinshaw agreed to let the Prince bankroll Arrows for the 99 season. The livery that year was shared with Repsol, so the car was painted in half Repsol orange and the rear half painted black with a T- logo. It's a very unique look, I'll give him that. Prince Malik
looks like a Doritos bag
with cameras surrounding him. He ate up the attention and didn't miss a chance to promote his brand T-. What's T-, you ask? Well, it was supposed to be an energy drink. It was supposed to be a motorcycle brand. It was supposed to be a lot of things, but it never ended up being much of anything at all. The plan was to debut the company in Formula One, then sell rebranded products like energy drinks, motorcycles, and bicycles under the T- badge. They even planned on rebranding Lamborghinis under the T- logo. Hey, you want to see my T- Lamborghini?
It's kind of stupid,
no.
actually.
No.
It's like really stupid.
No. T- was actually the third energy drink that sponsored Aero in 4 years. The others being Hype Energy Drink and Power Horse, which we somehow don't own
this in the
copyright
Yakuza
to.
Park.
Although T- did manufacture some energy drinks, they didn't make any money, and by the end of the 99 season, Prince Malik was nowhere to be found. When he was called upon to buy the rest of his shares, no one could get in touch with him.
Disappeared.
His shares ended up being bought by investment firm Morgan Grenfell, who sued Arrows in return. The Arrows team had fallen prey to a real-life Nigerian Prince scheme, and unfortunately, the loss of this funding and other woes led to the team shutting down in 2000. So what happened to Prince Malik? Well, he popped up again a few years later to sponsor a NASCAR driver, but more on that later.
Still
If you're liking this video so far, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so you never miss a video when they drop, which is every day of the week. It's crazy. One of the T- logos, this mirrored one, reminded me of a more recent mirrored
I can't
logo,
even read
the
that. It looks
Mission Winnow
weird.
on Ferrari's current car. I actually think it looks pretty sick, but what the heck is Mission Winnow? Winnowing is the process of removing the straw from the grain during the milling process. Mission Winnow has nothing to do with flour mills. When you go to their website, there isn't much information. Not any useful information anyway. It's full of vague business terms and it almost feels like a parody of a corporation. Just listen to this, quote, innovating and investing in an open dialogue, bringing people and businesses closer together, creating a mutually beneficial ecosystem. Their Twitter sounds like if a bot was programmed to jam as many corporate buzzwords
It made me
into
fall
one
asleep.
sentence as
Business
possible.
talk makes me fall asleep.
Further digging, and I found out that Mission Winnow is pretty much a shell company for Philip Morris International, or PMI. You know, the people that own Marlboro. Cigarettes. Philip Morris has been in Formula One for decades, so why is it Mission Winnow and not Marlboro? In 2006, the FIA banned tobacco sponsorships in Formula One. But since Mission Winnow is a new initiative that's not pushing tobacco products or any products at all, they're allowed to sponsor a car despite being owned by a tobacco company. Technically speaking, it's a CSR, or corporate social responsibility. In layman's terms, Mission Winnow encompasses activities that are meant to improve the public standing of a corporation by portraying it as a responsible member of society. Basically, it's PR. This wasn't the first time that Philip Morris got SSX tricky with it, though. F1 fans might remember the barcode logo on the Ferrari car from a decade ago. That was Marlboro's attempt at being subversive, but watchdog groups quickly caught on. At a standstill, it seemed like nothing more than vertical lines, but at high speed, the barcode resembled the Marlboro chevron. The Mission Winnow logo is actually just the Marlboro chevron on its side. It's the same dimensions, same shapes, it's everything. It's a way for Marlboro to stay in Formula One without it actually being involved. Guys, it's a loophole. A loophole that the World Health Organization is looking to close very soon. Last year at the Australian Grand Prix, Ferrari was forced to remove the Mission Winnow logo from their wing because of Australia's strict tobacco advertising laws. It wasn't just Australia.
Yay,
either.
Australia.
Scuderia Ferrari was forced to remove Mission Winnow advertising for 11 of the 21 races of 2019. It looks like their advertising strategy spun out. It might be a sign of what's to come, though. Ferrari isn't the only team with a tobacco sponsor. McLaren is sponsored by A Better Tomorrow, which is owned by British American Tobacco. McLaren also had to remove their advertising ahead of the Australian Grand Prix as well. It's sleazy, but in a way, it's pretty brilliant what Philip Morris is doing with Mission Winnow. It's guerrilla advertising. It gets people talking. I mean, hell, I'm making a video about it right now. They won. Clearly. Philip Morris puts this huge, intriguing logo on their car that has nothing to do with cigarettes. People find out about it, they get up in arms about it, and Philip Morris gets free advertising because humans are inherently curious. I mean, again, I'm talking about it right now. It's like when Radiohead put out In Rainbows, and then years later, someone realized that it fit exactly with OK Computer, and everything was based off zeros and ones. It's exactly like that.
What?
During the Austrian Grand Prix of 2018, viewers were puzzled by the iTime banners and advertisements. iTime was the title sponsor of the event, but no one had ever heard of this company before. At this conference, the CEO, Magdalena Krumova, describes the all-in-one iTime app as world-changing, social, and up-to-date. Because that's what sells me on an app, if it's up-to-date.
What does that mean?
Is iTime then? Well, It was a messaging app much like WhatsApp, but really, iTime was an MLM, or multi-level marketing scheme, also known as a pyramid scheme.
Here we go.
Apparently, they're still active, and what they actually do is still a mystery.
MLM
actually started other pyramid schemes under names Lioness and My World, which also sponsored F1 for a bit. And Lioness was actually.
I like the energy of mysterious logos and potentially fake. I know, right? It's weirdly cyberpunk.
I don't want to buy your product.
I like it.
There's no way I'm going to buy your stuff. If there's one type of person that Formula One attracts, it's old guys with a lot of money.
Oh, this one's weird.
Why one of the sponsors of the 2018 Singapore Grand
This one's weird and also kind of gross.
Sugarbook, a dating app that matched younger sugar babies with older rich men. Although they never sponsored a car, Sugarbook was set to co-sponsor a party at a bar hosted by Williams title sponsor Martini. That party would have been pretty gross had it not been canceled, probably because it would have been a PR nightmare for Martini and probably Williams as well. Look, I'm just a schmuck, but this is as good a time as any to bring up ethics in F1. For a billion-dollar multinational corporation, Formula One gets away with a lot of less than perfect behavior. It exists in this weird dichotomy, okay? On one hand, it's a world-class sport, second in popularity only to football, but on the other end you have really sleazy sponsorships, cutthroat behavior, and sometimes a disregard for human rights. And unfortunately it's been like that for a long time. This might be a little heavy and a little controversial, but when the governing body of a sport is sometimes morally bankrupt, a shady sponsor doesn't seem like the end of the world, and that's probably why Formula One attracts so many of them. Anytime you have an organization worth billions, there's gonna be some shadiness if you dig deep enough. So whatever happened to Prince Malik?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Ghosted the Arrows team in 1999. Well, he popped up again in the US in 2005, this time to sponsor NASCAR Busch Series driver Robert Richardson Jr. Allegedly, Prince Malik stole $750,000 from Richardson's dad, and even though he was acquitted, Prince Malik was jailed in Texas for perjuring himself.
That's not even related.
He's back in Nigeria and nowhere near the racing scene. Keep that hustle up, dude. No, don't steal
Weird.
Look, I love Formula One. I'm still gonna follow it if it comes back this season. Hopefully, it will. I just think when you have so much money involved in one thing and the world's attention, there's ultimately gonna be some shady sponsors. Hopefully, I'm not on any Formula One blacklist. Hopefully, I could get invited to something soon. Follow Donut on Instagram and Twitter at Donut Media. Follow me at Nolan J. Sykes. Subscribe to Donut Media. We put out a video every day, which is crazy. Check out these videos about Formula One. Our Up to Speed is finally, you can watch the Up to Speed on Formula One. Be kind. Don't steal money. See you next time.
Good lord. Anyway, I think that should be it for today, unless I was like missing something and I forgot to show you, but I don't think I do. Anything else we have is probably going to be put in for next week, so don't worry about that. And I think that's all you need to know. Tomorrow is supposed to be my day off. I might stream Splatoon for the new season. I don't know yet, but it is in the books. So, that should be all, and I hope you guys learned something, whether that be something about peanut butter jelly sandwiches, nuclear war, or, I don't know, Mr. Peanut. And make sure you guys save before you go, and have a wonderful rest of your night, alright? Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Bye-bye.